10 years in the game. What does that mean to you?
I was 40 when I started this. I'm 50 now. I guess it's 20% of my life. It's the greatest thing I've ever done by far. It's taken my whole life to the next level. Relationships, physicality, awareness, everything. It's hard to conceive, but I just keep thinking, you know, what are another 10 years gonna be like? What are another 20 years are gonna be like? London Real forced me to show up every day because I didn't want to let our people down. I didn't want to let London Realers down. Oh, it's been a great way to hold me accountable and make sure I'm the best version of myself every day because everyone's watching every day. But no, Brian, you don't have to do London Real. You get to do London Real. It's your honor to do this every single day. You shouldn't expect to get paid for it or anyone to watch or whatever. It's your honor to present these people's stories to the world. The genesis of London Real was me coming to the terms with the fact that money doesn't buy happiness. The world's constantly testing you. How bad do you want it? Every obstacle is actually, it's a growth experience in disguise if you can just try to step back. So London Real's been full of those. Is this all you got, Brian? Is this it? Is this what you're gonna do? Wear your skater clothes and do your cute little podcast? Or are you gonna do something with your life? Dan was being a jerk. He had just gone to a conference and he told someone at the conference that he was gonna beat me like a rented mule. And they came back and said, Dan said he's gonna beat you like a rented mule. And I said, fuck this guy. I just started getting my shit together. And as much as I currently hate Dan Pena, I will always have to thank him for that. And again, the world gave me this incredible sign. And I used to say the old man is always right. And that's not true, Dan. You're not always right. Sometimes you're fucking wrong.
One of the reasons why we love you, Brian, is because you take that risk. You're never afraid of doing something, challenging yourself, putting yourself in some of the most uncomfortable positions.
It wasn't just an Ironman race. It wasn't just a swim and a bike and run. It just like opened up my whole past to me. I had to talk about it. Are we really gonna put this in? We were like, is this real? Is this London Real? Because if this is fucking London Real, then you have to be real. We decided that we would put the whole I had a heroin overdose public for the first time ever. And thank you for the last 90 days.
Pleasure, mate.
We had over 65,000 concurrent people watching. It was the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, second only to President Donald Trump's coronavirus briefing that day. We walked outside, we heard the feedback, we thought it was amazing. About 20 minutes later, one of my team members came in and said, the video's been taken down from YouTube. What are you talking about? I've been doing this for 9 years. Never have once a single video been taken down. And so this started our battle with YouTube and every other social media platform for freedom of speech. Something really pissed me off that day. Made me really angry. If you don't want to listen to it, great. If you want to turn it off, great. But how can you not let someone else speak? That really bothered me. It was a really scary time. And all we could do was just keep fighting. We decided to fight back. I couldn't be more proud of what we've done. As Conor McGregor would say, I want to apologize for absolutely nothing. I'm proud of everything we did. Everything we did. I looked at all the businesses that were struggling. I was taking taxis home at night and the cabbies were saying, I can barely handle my mental health, let alone make my payment. I was getting all the business owners and friends I know saying, we're dying here and no one's talking about this. Let's go for it. I decided to run for mayor of London. We went for it and we went all in. The press came after me. I was the heroin taking, urine drinking, breakdancing American who wants to take over your country. This was the narrative.
And it makes so much sense, you know, when I look back at your life, Brian, working at Wall Street in that dog-eat-dog world, the rich stay rich, the poor stay poor. And then you have the issue with YouTube where there's a lack of censorship resistance, which is one of the main problems that the blockchain solves. And then you had all these people around you, like just, you know, literally whispering, Bitcoin, crypto, DeFi. I feel like this interview is really going through your life, your highest highs, your lowest lows, but also your seek for purpose. And is it a combination of these events, just like with London Real, what made you feel this is my new purpose?
It honestly feels, Alex, like my whole life has been preparing for this moment. We've been fighting for freedom of speech, we've been fighting for free and fair elections, and I think financial freedom is the last human right that's being violated on a daily basis on this planet. That's like fundamentally wrong, and we can change all of that with DeFi, period. We were built for this. We were built for this. So I've told everybody, and I'll say it again now, we're all in on this for the next 10 years. Like, this is part of who we are. It's the fabric of London Real. It's consistent with everything we do. And I couldn't be more excited. It's just one of the most greatest experiences of my life. I'm so grateful. If I died tomorrow, it would be okay, because I got 10 years of London Real. It's forced me to live this amazing life that it's kind of hard to even believe that's one person. And the next 10 years are going to be even further off the chain, I believe.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I'm Alex Fazel, and today is a very, very special episode. It's not the first, not the fifth, but the 10th anniversary of London Real. Brian, I'm both honored and so excited to be with you because I think that every single second is going to matter today. A bit of a background on me. I'm the Chief Partnership Officer at SwissBorg. We're democratizing finance with a fun, fair, and community-centric approach. And without further ado, our guest of today, the one and only, and your very own Brian Rose, former Wall Street banker, entrepreneur, TED speaker, freedom of speech campaigner, London Mayoral candidate, DeFi and crypto educator, and of course, part-time breakdancer. Brian, London Real has had over 500 million views with 5+ million subscribers across all platforms. You had 1,000 interviews with some of the greatest minds in the world. Different type of seminars, 6 documentary films on both the London Real and DeFi Academies. Man, it's been such an amazing, remarkable journey. And today, Brian, we have some great surprises for you because the London Real team has prepared some extracts, highlights of the best episodes from day one all the way to today, 10 years later. And we're gonna go through every emotion from happiness, pure joy, to depression, to fear, to everything so that we can really enjoy every single second of this show. And Brian, it is my honor to say the phrase that you always say, welcome to London Real.
Wow, man. Yeah, wow. It's incredible to be here. So first of all, thank you for being in the toughest chair in the room, which is that chair. And it's very weird being over on this chair, but I can't wait to talk today about the last 10 years of my life. It's been the most incredible journey of my life. Never planned to be in front of cameras and never planned to be a YouTuber or any of this stuff. It's been a blessing. I couldn't be more grateful. And I can't wait to share a bunch of moments here today, things that people don't know that happens behind the scenes. And I want to go through almost every adventure we've ever been on. I know you got some video clips to remind people of all these crazy things we've done. 10 years, it still feels like yesterday where I was buying the webcams and setting up the microphones in my kitchen. And now, boom, here we are. And it's just been a weird week for me because I'm going through and watching bits of our old movies and early interviews and me with t-shirts and me breakdancing and me doing Ironman races and me drinking ayahuasca. And it's just, man, it's been one of the most craziest things. And so can't wait to get started. Super excited for you to be here. For people that don't know, I just met Alex 2 weeks ago, I think. We were at a conference for DeFi, which stands for Decentralized Finance, and most of the world knows we've gone big into the whole crypto asset, blockchain, decentralized finance space because I believe it's the future. I think it probably could save humanity. And you guys at SwissBorg are doing some amazing work, and I look forward to doing more work with you guys. And you came up to me at the conference, you pulled me into your studio, which looked as cool as this, and you interviewed me for like 30 or 40 minutes. That's going to be out on your channel soon. People can check it out. But I felt a really good vibe with you. You're a break dancer as well, and a great interviewer. So thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. And people are probably going to be hearing more about the stuff we're going to be doing in the future.
I really look forward to it, Brian. And to be honest, like, here's an honor to be here because, I mean, it's both pleasure and pressure because I'm a huge fan of yours, but I really think that this is going to be a very meaningful episode. Now, I'd love to ask you, when you hear the sentence, 10 years in the game, what does that mean to you?
It's just weird because it almost feels like it happened like this. But also, if you look at some of the stuff we did last year for freedom of speech, that feels like it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because we've just done so much. So it's just really weird to think about. You know, I was 40 when I started this. I'm 50 now. I guess it's 20% of my life. It's the greatest thing I've ever done by far. It's taken my whole life to the next level. Relationships, physicality, awareness, everything. So it's hard to conceive, but I just keep thinking, you know, what are another 10 years going to be like? What another 20 years are going to be like? I don't know. It's been the strangest gift. It's almost like that movie, The Truman Show, where you get to watch this guy grow up from a kid into he's an older man, and you get to watch all bits of his life. I mean, that's kind of what I've done on YouTube, and it's like all out there. Like you said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think we're going to share a lot of this tonight. And tonight, I just want to be really honest with people about what it was like in these different stages of the journey, because it's not all home runs. You know, there were some real low moments. There was moments I wanted to quit London Real.
Yeah.
There were moments I wanted to just curl up in a ball and die. But we just kept pushing. And so in a weird way, it's like a metaphor for life. London Real forced me to show up every day because I didn't want to let our people down. I didn't want to let London Reelers down. In the beginning, that was like one person. Now it's like, you know, millions and millions of people. So I don't know, it's been a great way to hold me accountable and make sure I'm the best version of myself every day, because everyone's watching every day, which is a lot of pressure, but it also means like I have to step up and be someone I'm proud of every day. So I can't wait to share kind of the evolution and all the stuff behind the scenes tonight. But yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy to think it's been 10 years.
It's crazy, man. And like you said, you know, the first time I met you, I've thought about quitting so many times. And you said something that really moved me, Brian, which was, Alex, you know what? I do not need to do this. I do not necessarily have to want to do this, but I get to do this. And really, that simple sentence has been going through my head ever since. And is that kind of what you said, the perseverance of how you just like in the lowest moments, you still felt like I need to do this for the community, I need to do this for whatever purpose you had at that specific time and now?
Those first few years of London Real were really hard, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But it was a lot of times where I was just doubting myself. I was alone in that studio. I wasn't making any money. I had just adopted, you know, my stepdaughter, and I was just thinking, and everyone thought I was crazy, you know. My friends and family didn't support me at all. They didn't really want to even watch the shows. And there were some low moments where it was really easy to say, you know, why am I doing this? And no one's watching it. And to get into this complaining mode. And then I think I had a realization one day that might or might not have been helped by a psychedelic experience that said, no, Brian, you don't have to do London Real. You get to do London Real. And it's like, it makes me emotional to think that way. Like, it's your honor to do this every single day. You shouldn't expect to get paid for it or anyone to watch or whatever. It's your honor to present these people's stories to the world. And as soon as I had that change of frame of reference, everything changed. You know, one of my favorite guests on the show, John Joseph, who forced me to do an Ironman race on a vegan diet, he said, gratitude is attitude. And that's everything. You know, you can be a billionaire and be grumpy. You can be broke and be happy. So it's like, can you be grateful for the things you have and the challenges that life serves you? Life's going to throw you big ass curveballs, and there are growth opportunities, or they're a reason for you to quit. So it's like, what do you want to see them as? And so, again, part of my evolution in London Real is thinking different. So now I try, not always successfully, when I get a big problem, I try to think, what's life trying to help me grow at? And then how can I turn this into a positive? How can I turn this into a win? But in the early days, that was really hard. It was hard to keep going.
I can imagine. Gratitude is attitude. That is such a good quote, by the way. And Brian, should we just dive deep into it and look at some of the craziest moments as we kick off?
Yeah, let's do
Anything
that,
to say before that?
You know, just it's really weird, you know, people always say, you know, what are you doing here? Because like I come from San Diego, California. So I come from a place that's just sunny all the time. A lot of the guys I went to high school with surf and they stayed there to surf. You know, it's a very different mentality. And people see me now, I'm dressed in 3-piece suits, and they're like, what are you doing here? But for me, like, London feels like my home. This place has like my DNA in it. And so ever since I got here and moved here permanently in 2002, this is home to me. Like, this feels like my place, my people. And so, you know, I started in California, you know, went to school out in Boston at MIT, went to Wall Street. But when I finally got to London, this place really resonated with me. And so to then express it as my show, London Real, and to do some of the things that we've done in this city, it just all feels right. So again, don't let the accent fool you. You know, I'm a Londoner. And I get a lot of people coming to me up the streets that weren't necessarily born in this country, and they say, they get emotional. They say, Brian, I'm a Londoner too. And again, I think it's this vibe of this city. You know, it's optimistic. It respects our past. It looks to the future. Anybody can be anything here. And it really resonates with me. So yeah, that's why I'm here. I named the show London Real because I always thought London was the greatest brand name you could ever create. And what we were doing was going to be real. So that's why I created that show. And yeah, 10 years later, I guess we're going to talk about it a little bit today.
That's incredible. I mean, your background is really inspiring, and it almost feels like, you know, you getting into MIT and then all of a sudden moving to Wall Street. Should we talk about those later, or should we go into a video clip? How do you want to do this?
We can talk about that now, and then we can get into the beginning
Fantastic.
of London Real. So.
All right, cool. So MIT, growing up, Brian Rose, in the United States, you go into what is the most elite, arguably top 3 most elite schools on the planet. Really not easy to get into. Can you tell us about that specific parkour? That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so I was a science geek as a kid. If you look at the old pictures of me, like, I can't dress. I'm actually introverted by nature. So again, every day London Real forces me out of my comfort zone. On a Friday night, you will find me at home watching videos. Like, that's what I like to recharge, you know, pushing myself to go to an event or to go to a conference or to host a 1,000-person event or even to be on camera with someone. It's out of my comfort zone. So I was like a science geek, science fairs. I used to program code as well. And my dad was a Caltech engineer, so it was kind of in the family. My brother is a computer scientist who's way smarter than me. But for me, I was always interested in the science and stuff, but I was never interested in anything like this. I never wanted to be an actor or anything like that. And so I worked hard in school. Both of my grandparents came from a farming background and a cattle ranching background. So these were people that like lived off the land in like Arizona and Colorado who never quit, never complained. So when I look back now, I had like really good like vibes in my family that you just keep going, you keep going. So MIT was my first choice. I thought science was really cool and I wanted to get as far away from my home as possible. I wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. So San Diego to Boston is like almost a 6-hour flight.
Yeah.
And so I was excited. My brother went to Stanford. I was like, I want to get out of this whole place, get me away. So I got accepted and I got to go to MIT, and it was the most incredible experience. And even after 4 years where you start becoming cynical as a senior, every day I walked into Lobby 7 and looked up, I was like, it's actually an honor to be here. It was probably the first time I was grateful as a punk kid. And so there were super smart people there. It was really intense. The stakes were high. And I also joined a fraternity house where I lived for 4 years. I moved in the week after I joined. So you're 18 years old. You've got 50 guys in a house, max age 22, average age 20, all the beer you can drink. And you've got to also focus on learning. So it taught me right away, like discipline. Like a lot of guys, they couldn't make it through that phase. And so, yeah, it was amazing going there. It really pushed me. I also learned I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. But I also learned that hard work and a process will help you win in life. And so, yeah, it was an amazing experience. I went into engineering at first, had a couple jobs at like Ford Motor Company and an aerospace company, and I thought, I don't want to be here. And then I watched the movie Wall Street, and I thought, I want to be where the action is, where the money is. I was always a little bit of an entrepreneur as a kid. My grandpa was a horse trader. So for me, I thought this is where I can make it. And so, yeah, the Wall Street banks recruited us rocket scientists at MIT. They came down there. I went there for interviews, and then I moved to New York City in 1993.
Was that like the biggest transition in your life? Obviously, you leave California, you end up in Boston, you learn about hard work, you learn about discipline, and then all of a sudden you fall in love with this movie Wall Street. You go to New York, which by the way, in the late 80s, early 90s, was really rough and tough. I lived there in that era, and it was a scary, scary city. Just outside of Manhattan, wherever you go, it's scary. But on top of that, you're in the dog Wall Street world. Was the movie a bit of a Disney version of what the reality was compared to that? How was that transition? Take us back to those days.
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, going into the fraternity house was a real weird thing for me because you're around 50 men and it's like a wolf pack. And I was a pledge. I had to do push-ups. I had to say yes, sir, no, sir. I had to learn history. I had to get hazed. And I had to learn what it was like to be a man. And it was an amazing education. So that experience was a real big part of my growing up. So that was big. Living on the East Coast where it snowed and all that was a big transition. But yeah, moving into Manhattan, which is in itself one of the most intense places in the world. And then at that time, I remember I was in the East Village and it was, you didn't want to go down past Avenue A because it was just hectic, And I'd see police on the streets and I'd want to hang around them because it was a little scary. And then you go down to Wall Street. And I would say my experience at Bankers Trust was 10 times more intense than that movie because the trading floor was full of these heavy alpha males and females who would play head games with each other all day long and just get in each other's faces, all positioning for hundreds of millions of dollars. And to just be in the middle of that, it was like being hazed all over again, really, as a fraternity. But it was amazing. But those were two probably, the big transitions in my life.
Was it, obviously there's Wall Street, the movie, there's also The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
Are there some similarities? Is that a bit far-fetched in terms of the movie? It's a pretty crazy movie. Obviously Jordan Belfort was there the same days, the same era you were there, right?
And I've had Jordan on the show and I love Jordan.
You've had him,
And, but that movie, it's called The Wolf of Wall Street, but that was a bucket shop, outside of Manhattan that was, selling penny stocks.
Yeah.
So it's a great story and it's kind of funny, but it's not what I experienced.
Yeah.
I was in Manhattan at one of the biggest global banks with 300 people on a trading floor that were just really slashing and burning and stabbing each other in the back and cutting throats for hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. So we weren't like throwing midgets at a dartboard or anything. It was pretty hardcore, and there's a lot of money at stake, and there was a lot of, like I said, head games being played, and so somewhere in between, but really intense, and I learned a lot, and they gave us a lot of responsibility. So
you were really in the Shark Tank, right? Like Long Island was more like a little pond, like you were in the midst of that crazy dog-eat-dog or Shark Tank, sharks eating each other, that Red Sea. What was something that made you realize that, this is maybe not for me? This is not the purpose. This is not why I'm on this planet. Was there a specific moment? Can you bring us back to that moment where you felt like this is a little bit more disappointing than I thought it would be?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's kind of why we're here today, because the genesis of London Real was me coming to the terms with the fact that money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah.
And I convinced myself as a kid that when I was rich, I would be happy. And I don't know if that's the American dream. I wouldn't blame America for that. But for some reason, I had convinced myself of that. So I had one goal, to make as much money as possible. That's why a lot of people go to Wall Street. And after 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you actually start figuring out what the hell you're doing. You're not just a punk kid anymore. And the money starts to roll in. And that started happening to me. And I started learning. And I moved to London and started working in credit derivatives. And I started becoming wealthy and also realizing it wasn't making me happy because I wasn't going after all my internal demons. I wasn't also serving anybody else. I wasn't contributing. And it was literally just making me more and more miserable. And so, look, God bless if that's what you choose and that's your life and that makes you happy. But for me, I finally figured out there was very little correlation between the next bonus I got and how good I felt about myself. And it got to a point where I was 40 years old. I was alone in my really expensive flat in Shoreditch. I was depressed. I didn't have any friends. I was drinking myself to death. And yet, on paper, on LinkedIn, I looked like this super successful person with a great title, with millions of dollars in the bank. And something in me said, you got to do something different. Or you're just going to, die. So I think I took a meditation course. And after that course, I said to myself, you better do something different. And so that was the genesis of London Real. And so I've been there. I spent 15 years in the financial industry in these hardcore trading floors. And I understand the banking system really, really well. And I just know that is not the path to happiness. And a lot of people discover this, whether you're a musician or an Instagram influencer or a Wall Street trader, the money, the prize will never bring you the happiness. It always has to be in service of others or personal growth. There's got to be those factors, or I don't think you're happy. So London Real was my, my last ditch attempt to maybe change that. I had no idea it would bring me here, but I knew I had to do something different. So that was like my big come to Jesus moment, I guess you would say.
Come to Jesus moment. And it kind of like, it was your darkest times, as you were saying, right? You were really reflecting and what the hell am I gonna do? But you fell in love with London. Like, you just look around us, you can see the flag and you're so happy here. What makes London so special to you? Almost like a new identity, a new Brian Rose.
You know, New York kicked my ass, you know, and we'll talk about like some of the things I got myself into in New York. It always crushed me, you know, from a personal standpoint to the way I treated myself to drugs and addiction. And I struggled to have success in that city. And maybe because I hadn't come to terms with myself. But every time I came to London, I don't know, I created something of value. I don't know, I see opportunity here. I always felt as an immigrant, I could do it better. I don't know, we just had this, and London is a place that I think rewards that. So, it was always that place that, I don't know, brought me joy and success. And so as weird as it sounds, there's a kid from California that finds this place my home. And I was in a really dark place back then and I needed a change. And it was just, I pulled the ripcord is what I did. I walked into my managing director and I quit. There was no plans for London Real. There was no plans for a podcast. I just knew I had to do something different. And that was a real low moment for me, trying to figure out what was next. My identity was all wrapped up in that as well. And now I was nothing. So that first year, 2011, was a difficult time. But that's when this idea came up.
You know, a lot of people struggle to find their purpose and meaning in life. You know, man's search for meaning, as Viktor Frankl beautifully says. How did London Real happen? Was it an epiphany? Was it a breakthrough? Or was it still you were searching for yourself? You were still testing the waters and see, does this make sense to me? What was that thought process? We'd love to hear that.
So it's important for everybody listening, like 10 years, it looks like this was all this carefully crafted plan.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't.
It really wasn't.
Yeah.
Like I was crying for help. And you know, I did a TED Talk years later where I talked about this moment I had. And in the city, we had a ski trip every year in Verbier where we'd take all our clients and we'd rent out Richard Branson's chalet. And we would take all of our clients, so Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all the top people. And we'd go out there for a weekend and just live it up, right? And I remember being there one weekend in this plush environment with the champagne and the helicopter skiing and the hot tubs. And I remember being surrounded by all these bankers and I felt so alone. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, this isn't fun. This isn't what I want. This is horrible. And everyone else is popping bottles and having a great time. And I felt so disconnected from the world, from myself, from even these people, which they're nice people, but I felt wrong. So like these moments started to build up. At the same time, I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience. And back then he wasn't even on YouTube. I think he was on Vimeo. And I was watching these men mostly have these conversations I'd never heard before, you know, talking about ideas and concepts and ayahuasca and this. And I would plug in on the weekends and I'd be like, wow, I just felt like I was part of something special. And I had been following the UFC early days. I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since 2002. So I knew who Joe was because of the UFC. So I was watching his podcast really early on. And I thought what he was doing it really moved me. It really moved me. I would finish those 3-hour videos on a Sunday afternoon and I'd be like, wow, I never felt so good, so connected. And the back of my mind, I just started thinking, you know, maybe I could do a podcast, but I was actually terrified to do it. So that was maybe in the back of my head. And after I quit, I started kicking that idea around. And it took me 9 months to actually pull the trigger because I was so scared about what people would say, that I couldn't do it. I'd never put myself out there before. So that's how that all kind of brewed up. If it wasn't for these things, it would have never happened.
It really sounds like your stars started to connect and start to align, like multiple factors were pushing you towards your purpose, but you're still a bit unsure, still early days to really know that is my purpose in life. It's a hard, like you said, it's a process, right? It takes a lot of time.
The world is giving you signs.
Yeah, it's giving you signs.
All the time. We just choose to ignore it or we complain.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite guests on the show, Wes Watson, he spent 10 years in the California penitentiary. A big love to Wes. I feel really connected to this guy. I've only met him once when I interviewed him in New York. He says, Brian, life is happening for you, life is not happening to you.
Yeah.
And so I had all these events that were happening to me, trying to show me that you needed to change, Brian, and I would ignore them. No, I'm just gonna make more money. No, I watched them, well, I'm gonna be Bud Fox. No. And then finally I just started to, if you just listen, get out of your own way. And finally I just started to listen. And when I listened, I was like, okay, I gotta go on this new path. Even though it went fundamentally against everything I stood for. There's no business model in being on YouTube and talking to people for 45 minutes, right? There's no purpose, there's no future in it. There was nothing in it. London Real was never intended to be a business or anything. So that was counterintuitive to everything in my DNA. And yet something was pulling me to do it. It was also part therapy session. I probably needed to talk about my problems to other people somehow.
Yeah.
If you really look at it, it's like, a little cry for help, little therapy session. It's all that rolled up in one. And luckily I listened and pulled the trigger and started that show, but it was really scary to do. And again, that first few years were really hard to do because, your friends and family aren't there to support you. And a lot of people, I teach in my academies, and they always say, Brian, my friends and family aren't supporting my podcast or me learning about DeFi or all this stuff. Why don't they support me? Why doesn't my wife support me?
Yeah.
She's terrible. And I said, no, they're not supposed to support you. They're looking to you to prove to them that what you're doing is the right path. And unless you stay the course, why would they just blatantly and give their support to you? They need you to show them. And so I used to say, complain my friends and family weren't even watching my show. Some of my best friends from New York City, a year in, I said, have you watched this show? They're like, I'm too busy. I was like, you realize I'm dedicating 24 hours of a day to my life to this show called London Real, and you wouldn't even click a button and watch it for 2 minutes. Like, it was devastating to me. But it was the world saying, okay, make something better. Make something better. Make something that they will watch. And later we would make something that everyone in the world would watch. But we had to get better and show the world you're here for the long run and prove it. So again, the world's constantly testing you. How bad do you want it? Every obstacle is actually, it's a growth experience in disguise if you can just try to step back. So London Real's been full of those. It continues to be to this day. For me, it's like a little cauldron. It's like an atelier, as they would say in France. And I get to come in every day and it just goes after all my weaknesses. It pushes me in every single way to find out, what are you made of? How are you going to grow today? And that's what it is for me. So, I'm so grateful to everyone that watches and all the guests that come on the show. But even if nobody watched, it's a way for me to go into my demons every single day and to show up. So, yeah, in that sense, it's been a blessing. And that's why I encourage everybody out there to just broadcast and to start things. Because it makes you do hard things too.
That's super cool. A great lesson there. And speaking of showing and watching, why don't we transition? We jump into the DeLorean together.
Yes.
We go back to the past, 2011, early years. Want to watch it?
Yeah, let's do it. Here's a video, I think, of early years of the studio, right?
That's right.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Cool.
I felt like I woke up from a nightmare. I was doing something I loved, just for the sake of it.
There are no good or bad people. People are shaped by culture.
I started making real human connections. And for the first time in my life, people liked me.
Question the nature of reality and what life's all about, and I think is a big question we should all be asking.
Instead of extracting value from the world, I was adding value to it.
So there you go. Those were the early days of the studio. That was like my kitchen. You can see I got like a Fu Manchu there or whatever. And it was a one-man show. And I set it up in my kitchen table. I bought some webcams and stuck some microphones on. And those were the early days. Anybody that would be stupid enough to come on my show would come on my show. So old buddies from the city, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people, anybody I could just get to show up. Those were the early days.
But you still got some amazing people on the show. How do you do that? You're in your kitchen.
Yeah,
what was appealing for them to come on your show?
The first 20 episodes, they were just, honestly, just friends and friends of friends, anybody that would say okay. I would argue the first 50 shows, maybe they weren't that good, but like early on we started talking about issues. So I think there was the Occupy Wall Street protests, so we went down and took a look at that and talked about it. I think we early started talking about, psychedelic journeys and stuff. And again, I thought that was really dangerous. I thought the Bank of England will never allow me to go back to the city if I talk about something like a psychedelic on screen. So each one of these moments, now you look back and you're like, no big deal. But for me, I was terrified. So those were the early days. Again, anybody I could con to get on. But I just tried to make each episode better. So if you watch the early episodes, and they're all on YouTube, they're all on our website, they're all there, unless they've been taken down by some platforms. You can see the lighting's bad, my facial hair is bad, the cameras are bad, but like every episode, I tried to get a little bit better until today, and then hopefully next year will be even better. So that was it, and the point was, I promised that I would do one episode a week. So I promised in the beginning to nobody that I would do one episode a week, and somehow I felt accountable to London Reelers, and that kept me going. Every Sunday, we published an episode, no matter what. I asked a homeless guy one time to come on the show because I didn't have any guests. He actually said no.
Wow.
And I was getting sometimes desperate just to get anybody to come on the show. These were really tricky years. Again, friends and family thought I lost my mind. This is 2011. Podcasts weren't a thing. YouTube wasn't really a thing. And I just kept going. And for me, it was just everything I did. The studio was in my apartment. It was a loft thing I had there. People would come over. I would live there. I would wake up and I would do London Reel. And my wife, Mariana, now, she never questioned me. Never questioned. Hard to believe, actually. Hard. I think after like 3 years, she might have once said, do you think this will be a business one day? That's it. Otherwise, she never questioned me. She just supported me. So that was super helpful. And then I always joke, the banks financed London Reel. So I was living off my savings. So whatever the banks had paid me in bonuses, that's how I survived those first couple of years, because there was no business. There was nothing. It was just me having conversations.
Behind every great man is a great woman. I would even like to say next to every great man is a great woman. And it's incredible, because you may think, okay, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of taking that first action. But just a year later, you're invited to what is arguably, actually, in terms of metric, is the largest podcast in the world. Joe Rogan, someone you were watching on TV. How was that transition? I mean, just a year later. It must be a freak event. How did you feel at that time? Bring us back to that specific moment where you got an email or phone call or...
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I think we got a clip from that episode. So let's play it, and then I'll talk about that whole experience, because it was absolutely mind-blowing. So here's me on Joe Rogan, episode 271.
London Reel is here. Strap the fuck in. We're fixing to get shit popping.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night. All day.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, it's awesome to be
here.
So
good to have you guys here. I saw you guys on YouTube a while back. I don't remember what I just say the gentlemen Brian and Nick from London Reel. These guys are one of the coolest up and coming podcasts that I've had a chance to listen to, and really is fucking right up our alley. The thoughts that we put out there and the thoughts that we receive from other people. It's not this woo-woo thing. This is a real exchange of energy. It's real.
I've been impressed by the power of a conversation. Like we get on the air once a week, and we have an hour conversation with someone who we think is important. And that's why we put them in the center of the screen. We want to feature these people to the world, whether it's Simon Powell with his psilocybin solution, or an MMA fighter or somebody. And it's like, check this dude out. But it's had a big effect on me. I mean, I've grown so much as a person this last year. Probably been the best year of my life, and this is like 10 years in financial markets and making money and doing this. But like this last year, I've changed the most. I freaking drank ayahuasca 2 years ago. I would have been the dude that glazes over when you talk about psychedelics. I'm like, oh, you're one of those fucks.
Yeah.
No, and now I'm doing it.
The way to change the world is to let people know how you've changed, and then that just it branches out, it ripples, it has this massive sort of snowball effect, and it just grows. And if there's any way that we can improve our world, it's improving the way the other people around us see it. and approach it.
If anybody wants to start a podcast in any city around the world, if you got questions, you can email, message us, call us. We'll be happy to help. I'd love to see more of these things. You don't have to call it real. You can call it whatever the fuck you want.
This whole thing might be a fucking dream within a dream within a dream.
It might be a PlayStation 7
wrapped
game,
up
right?
in chocolate sauce and pumped into your veins through a pot cookie that Brian Redband handed you on your way out the door. London Real, bitches.
Thanks, Joe,
That's
so
what's
much.
up.
Joe, thanks so much.
So that whole experience with Joe Rogan was like the craziest thing that ever happened, because our show was inspired by him, and we were broadcasting, and I thought maybe one day if Joe came to London for the UFC, he might come on the show. That's all. And then it was like a year in, a long year, where I was wondering like what we're doing, and then we saw a comment on YouTube from like Joe Rogan saying, cool video, and we're like, there's no way that's Joe. There's no way. And then he like retweeted one of our tweets. I was like, there's no way, there's like an assistant or something. And then he commented or something, and then he DM'd and said, how would you like to come on the show? And I just thought, this is the craziest thing. It's like being on a planet and beaming out signals to see if there's life on another planet, and then someone out in the middle of the galaxy hearing your signal and coming back. So to be invited on that show by Joe was like, it was such a big deal. We made an excuse to be in LA. We had no reason to be there. We said, oh yeah, we'll be there in 10 days. And then we flew out there and went on the show. And it was such a huge honor. And Joe was amazing. He was a big deal for me back then. And he's continued to just trailblaze. And he is, like you said, it's the biggest show in the world right now. And our show was inspired by Joe in a huge way. Everything from the format to the open-ended piece to the fact that we don't edit, all that came from Joe. Fine, now I wear suits and we have this lighting, but like it's all there. So it was a massive honor, such an incredible experience. And again, without that, would we have survived the next few years? I don't know. It was just another sign from the universe saying, you're on the right path. Keep doing what you're doing. Also, I remember leaving to go to LA the night before, and I thought to myself, when you get done with Joe, you have to come back to London and keep delivering and doing shows. This isn't going to make you. And that's another really important thing. Like, appearance like that doesn't make you. He's had 1,700 shows. Most of them you don't remember. So it's like, that was a beautiful thing, but it didn't mean we didn't have to get back to work. So yeah, again, it's hard to believe that was a year, because it felt like it took years until that recognition, but that was a really big deal. And again, it just gave us a little fuel, gave me a little fuel to just keep going. Yeah.
That was a really big deal. And if I can quote you, Brian, you said something like, I was inspired by the power of conversation. This almost feels like your purpose is becoming clear, or starting to become clear. Is that what it was?
Yeah, you can see me in there, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. You know, it's funny. It's like I'm a little experiment. It's like I'm an experiment. It's like I'm an animal in the zoo, and everyone around is watching what's happening, and they're saying, well, can't you see what's happening here? It's like I'm living this life, but you can see my brain is starting to understand that I'm on the right path. So yeah, I'm like, I can see the power of a conversation. Like Wall Street Brian would have never said that, right? Wall Street Brian would have slapped the other Brian in the face, because that's a ridiculous statement. But yeah, you can see I'm starting to connect with people. I'm starting to feel this human connection. I'm starting to contribute to the human experience. And I'm trying to describe that to Joe in even the rudimentary way that I understood it back then. And again, this goes counterintuitive to everything I taught my whole life. At MIT, when you're an engineer, there's physics, there's equations. On Wall Street, there's P&L, there's money. You either win or you lose. With London Real, it's all about like feelings. You know, this is what I was used to. So I was just going with these feelings, you know. And every year I would look in the mirror and say, are you going to keep doing London Real? You're not making any money. Nobody's watching this show. Nobody cares. And the guests, most of them say no. And every year I would look at myself and say, but you're a better person. You've got better friends. You're happier. So we're going to do one more year. And this is the conversation I would literally have with myself every year for the first 3 years, because it was hard times. There was, a few lights at the end of the tunnel, but there was no logic in what I was doing. It was pure feeling, which again isn't normal for me. So yeah, but thank God I trusted it. It was pulling me. So I'd say to anybody who's watching this now, if something's pulling you, try to explore that, is what I would say, even if it doesn't make logical sense. Sometimes we're too much in our heads these days in this world. It's too cerebral, and I've had a lot of guests that talk about that too. Sometimes you have to feel it. That's what Bruce Lee said, right? In the movie Enter the Dragon, he's teaching the students, and he says, tell me what it was about that. I said, I think, and he said, he hits him in the head. He says, don't think. Yeah, don't think. Feel. Yeah. Bruce Lee dropping science. You know, he's right. Don't think, feel. You know, so much of our life now is you know, it's logic. It's above this space, but everything is out there. It should be pulling you somewhere. So I was starting to understand then. I'm still understanding that now, but it's more clear now.
And for all those out there like looking for their purpose, is it normal to be on this process of discovering? Like, it's not like one day suddenly, oh, I know why I'm here on this planet, right? It's a whole process that...
Not at all. And also, artists aren't inspired. Like, that doesn't work.
That doesn't
like,
work.
Real artists do the work every single day. Real writers, they write when they're not inspired. Do you know how many episodes I've had in here when I didn't want to be in the chair that day? I was angry, I was frustrated, I was mad, but I knew I just had to show up. And so sometimes the purpose isn't there for you. Sometimes you just have to do the work. And also keep asking yourself, why am I doing this? So why was I doing London Real? To make money? To be famous? To get views? Or was I doing it to tell the stories of incredible people, to learn, and to broadcast those stories to other people? So it was constantly checking me. Are you doing this for the right reasons, Brian? Because if you're doing it for money, guess what? It's not here.
It's not here.
And if that's your feedback loop, you're going to quit. And if you're doing this for fame, you're going to quit too. So it clears all the suckers out, actually. And it asks you, if you're really here for the right reasons, then guess what? We're going to let you continue. So I would argue that the world is asking everyone those questions. It always has to not be about you. And I know that's going to be weird for people to hear, maybe even coming from me. It can't be about you at the end of the day, because then your selfish reasons will not serve other people. How are you being of service to others? How are you providing value to others? And guess what? No one's going to thank you for it. Some people are going to punch you for it.
Yeah.
And yet you got to wake up and say, thank you, can I have another? Thank you, can I have another? And just keep going and going and going. And then you'll create something amazing. So that's what I would say to anyone out there. And again, try to feel, and just remember, you only have one life. And also take risks. And I had a couple guests that encouraged me to take risks. And we can talk more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some really interesting episodes. And speaking of which, should we move towards 2013?
Yeah, let's talk 2013.
Dorian Yates.
Yeah, Dorian
Tell us
Yates.
a little bit about it before we kick off the clip.
Yeah, you know, Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia, and one of the big guests we had on the show at that point. You know, we'd been on Rogan, but then finally Dorian came to the studio. I actually wasn't a bodybuilder as a kid. I was a dork, a science geek, and so I didn't really know much about him. But if you ever lifted weights as a kid, then you know Dorian would have been one of your idols. And one of our interns had just trained with him and hooked it up. And Dorian just came down and sat in the chair. I didn't know it would be different than any others, but this episode became really big because people could see that here was someone that wasn't what we thought he would be. So I think we got a little clip of some of that, of a little bit of Dorian. So we'll play it now.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
This week on London Real, we welcome back the professional bodybuilder and 6-time Mr. Olympia, Dorian Yates.
Bodybuilding was so individual. It was just all down to me, win or lose. And that was the appeal. They say don't put all your eggs in one basket, but I only had one egg, one basket. Because it's not possible. It's not possible to be training harder or more consistently or more dedicated than me, because I couldn't give a single ounce more to any aspect of this thing that I'm doing. So that makes me feel pretty powerful and pretty confident. One consciousness, having billions of different experiences at the same time. There's no point kind of fighting with people and getting angry, because it's just like you're fighting with yourself. I trudged through that snow, up past my knees to the gym, and I thought to myself, you know what, those fuckers in California right now, they're driving their Porsche, their Ferrari out in the sun, going to the beach. I'm here trudging through the snow, and they're gonna pay for that.
So, you know, Dorian was a big guest at the time because a lot of people knew him, but they had never heard him talk or do anything except pose as a bodybuilder. He was articulate, he was interesting, he spoke about psychedelics, he spoke about loss, he spoke about his career, and it just kind of really showed off, I think, our format. And there we were listening and learning, and that video just blew up, and it went all around the world, and it was just a big milestone for us. And so we're starting to kind of get a little of a stride here. You know, we're starting to get a few guests that are just, punching above their weight, and we're starting to feel a little momentum, but it was still hard times, it was still 3 years in almost, and it's like, what are you doing, and there was no business model, and besides a few episodes that popped, it was still me alone producing these shows, and it was hard to know what was happening next. So I think that brought us into 2014.
Yeah, Dan Pena, who became your friend, your mentor, hardcore dude. Yeah. Should we go and watch out this? This is gonna be pretty cool. This guy is unique.
Here's a clip, I think, of the first meeting of me and Dan in the studio.
Intensity.
This week on London Real, we have the entrepreneur and mentor, Dan Pena.
I'm part Freud, part General Patton, and part Jack Welch. Self-esteem is the key to high performance. We only make changes for 2 reasons, Brian: desperation or inspiration. You can do anything you want that you have passion for, because that eliminates most of the crap, because most people don't follow their dream. Before I had any money, I used to go to the Rolls-Royce dealers and sit in the cars and smell the leather. Practice success before you're successful.
My audience is either going to love you or hate you. I don't know.
What gets measured gets accomplished. Perfection equals paralysis. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Dress British and think Yiddish. If you want to send your kids to a better school, if you want to be able to take care of your mother when she gets dementia, if you want to, this all takes money, not Zen.
On Sunday, London Real presents Dan Pena, your first 100 million.
When I see mistakes, if we were at war, we'd all be dead.
So that was the day the world was introduced to Dan Pena, the $50 billion man, now known as the $1 trillion man. We share a tailor, if you haven't noticed. And just to put a little perspective in, this was 2014, April. So I had been doing London Real for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And I was alone still, recording everything on my own, cutting the videos on my own. I used to walk around the studio and turn the cameras on while the guest was sitting in the chair.
No way.
I had no help. We were making no money, of course. I think we had Bulletproof Coffee as a sponsor that barely paid the rent. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. I was like, Brian, at some point you got to put a stop loss order in, as you know, right? Because this isn't working. You got to go do something else. And I didn't know where to go. And Dan shows up on my doorstep. At first, I didn't like him. He reminded me of everything I ran away from in Wall Street, because he's all about bucks. Yeah. He's all about the money. He's all about success. And he repulsed me. And I was like, no, I'm the ayahuasca drinking, new age, we are all one kind of guy. And Dan got in the studio and said, basically, during the episode and afterwards, is this all you got, Brian? Is this it? Is this what you're going to do? Wear your skater clothes and do your cute little podcast? Or are you going to do something with your life? Basically. And Dan is super intense. And if you think he's intense there, try him out in person or at the castle. Like, it's all real, times about 10. And so that was my experience with Dan. He spent another 3 hours with me in the studio. He went outside on the street. I called him a taxi. He said, some people can see a green glow around me. Can you see it? And I said, no, Dan. And he said, okay. And he got in a taxi. And he stayed in touch, though. He kept emailing me back, and he was really supportive. And I still have all those emails on file. He writes emails in all red capital letters. And that was my journey, the start of the journey with Dan Pena, who became my mentor, my friend, my enemy. I both equally love and hate Dan Pena. I currently hate Dan Pena, but at times I've loved him, and I don't know what's going to happen next. I currently hate him very much. I don't think he likes me very much either. But that's how it is with Dan. So that was in May, and we stayed in touch, for a few months. And then he invited me for dinner at the Ritz Hotel in London in August, and I remember I had to go on a Sunday night and put on a suit and tie with my wife. We met him for dinner with Sally, his wife, who's amazing, by the way. Love Sally. Don't like Dan, but love Sally. And at that dinner, he said, Brian, you need to come to my castle and come to a real week with me in this seminar. And that is where I had to make a decision. And again, everything inside me was saying, no, this is a bad idea. F this guy. And then I said yes. So
And that castle was more like a boot camp with tons of alpha males, right? Should we watch a video?
Yeah, let's watch a video of me going to the castle. This would have been October. I remember I was there for Halloween night, October 31st of 2014. Here's the video.
This week on London Real, I travel to Guthrie Castle in Scotland to be mentored by Dan Pena, the $50 billion man.
All the high performance guys and gals that I know are exactly the same. They push. And they're not afraid of, stepping on their dick. They're not afraid of failure. They're not afraid of embarrassing themselves. It's fucking hard to be a high performance person and be at the top of your game. When I don't feel like being productive, I tell myself, you cunt, you're gonna do it anyway. I believe in baptism by fire. We've had people pass out, people shit their pants. Jesus Christ. I am special. There's no fucking doubt about it. My whole life I've been in the flow. I was doing Spartan shit 40 fucking years ago. The only thing I can't control is you giving up on yourself. I help people do what they don't want to do to be what they want to be.
So again, there's an entire 2.5 hour episode of me at the castle. It's got the before interview, and then it's got an after interview, and it shows pieces from my 7 days in the castle. I had to wear a suit and tie every day. I literally had to pull all my old suits out of the closet from Wall Street and dust them off. I was cursing the whole thing because wearing a tie every day, like I didn't even do that on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Like I didn't ever dress like this when I was in the city of London. So, and going up there was a really difficult thing to do. We were having a really hard time at home. We were trying to have a baby, and my wife had suffered a miscarriage, and it was a really low moment. And it was a really perfect chance for me to quit on that opportunity. Dan was being a jerk. He had just gone to a conference, and he told someone at the conference that he was gonna beat me like a rented mule. And they came back and said, Dan said he's gonna beat you like a rented mule. And I said, fuck this guy. And I went up to that castle. I took a 6-hour train journey up the coast, up there, thinking about it the whole time. And I went in the castle thinking, if he pushes it 1 second too far, I'm in a fucking taxi and I'm gone. That's the way I walked into the castle with Dan. Now you see I was smiling and stuff, but I was on the edge because I didn't like this guy. But I got to the castle, and it was just an incredible 7-day experience. First of all, it feels like home, Guthrie Castle, in a weirdly weird way. Wow. It smells like my grandpa's ranch in Arizona in a weird way. Dan Pena is something out of a movie. Yeah. You seriously can't make him up. The Bond villain's got nothing on Dan Pena. Yeah. Here you got some guy, ex-oil man, ex-Wall Street guy, who lives in a castle in Scotland, who screams at the top of his lungs, who wears 3-piece suits. I mean, like, you can't make this stuff up. Yeah. Dan has lived a crazy-ass life. And you get up there, and it's real. The service is 5-star. The butlers are there. Everything's there. And I've been in 5-star hotels, and he does an amazing job. And the seminar was really good. And I said, what you're going to do is you're going to isolate us. You're going to break us down. He's ex-military. You're going to deprogram us and reprogram us up. And I said, I know what you're doing, Dan. And he said, okay, you're right. And then he did it to me. So we were up there. It was actually all men that time. He has women too. And we all became like this wolf pack. And it was like one of the funnest things I've ever done. People see Dan being mean all the time. He actually tells a lot of funny stories, and sometimes it's fun in the background. So that was my experience with Dan. I came back from that castle on a mission. And some things changed with me that I can't even explain to this day. I started dressing differently, even though he didn't tell me to. I started just taking everything more seriously. Within months, I hired our first full-time employee here, Julian Bales, who's been with us since then, who was volunteering before that, who's still here and is an incredible part of this organization. I just started getting my shit together. And as much as I currently hate Dan Pena, I will always have to thank him for that. And again, the world gave me this incredible sign. And I say, if it was no Dan Pena, there would be no London Real. And I hate saying that right now, but it's true. It's true. And I used to say the old man is always right. And that's not true, Dan. You're not always right. Sometimes you're fucking wrong. But he's usually right because he's telling you what you don't want to hear. And I always used to joke that there's Pena and there's ayahuasca. I used to call it the Pena-osca. And people say ayahuasca is something that people drink and it makes you more loving and it's this total hippie vibe typically. And Pena is this alpha male, kill everybody, dominate vibe. How could these two be the same? But they both call you on your own bullshit is what they do. They both look at you and say, it's not good enough. Look what you're not doing right. So I find those two experiences to be very similar. Very uncomfortable. My meetings with Dan usually suck because he's usually being really nasty to me, and saying horrible things to me, and saying it's not good enough. There's nothing I can do that's good enough for Dan Pena. If I made $1 billion in the next few years, he'd be like, so what? I've got mentees that have made $16 billion. I've created $1 trillion of net worth. He said $1 billion. I mean, like, I've seen Dan say things that just would shock most people. You know, he had a mentee at the thing who had made $70 million. He's like, $70 million? He's like, I wouldn't get out of bed to take a shit for that kind of money. That's what Dan says. Jeez. So it's like, he's always pushing you to be better. And in some ways, it's incredible to have someone like that, a coach. But in some ways, it's really difficult. And at some point, I have to become Brian Rose, just like the movie Wall Street. There's Gordon Gekko and there's Bud Fox. And at the very end, Bud Fox said, at the end of the day, I realize, as much as I wanted to be Gordon Gekko, I'll always be Bud Fox. And he walks away from Gordon. And I have that moment with Dan on a regular basis. And again, I'm very different than Dan. And for Dan, he's got one metric. It's money in the bank.
Money in the bank.
And for me, I have other metrics. And he tells me that they're wrong. And sometimes he's right, but sometimes he's wrong. So my relationship continued with Dan over the years in different ways. And he continued to mentor me.
And speaking of the fists, you're in the middle of a beautiful castle in Scotland. And all of a sudden, is it true that he just throws you into a ring and you have to box someone? Like,
yeah, so he started to introduce boxing into the castle seminar. When I was there, I always wondered why there wasn't a physical component. And I went back for his hardcore seminar in the January of 2020, where you can only come back if you're a graduate. And he had introduced boxing, where in addition to the whole crazy 7 days, where you're isolated, you're wearing a suit every day, you're eating, in 5-star with butlers in a castle. You're in a castle. And then you're being hammered by him every single day, and you got talks with him at night. Now he throws you in a boxing ring and puts the videos on YouTube. So I went and boxed in January as well. And it was just crazy. So Dan just continues to push buttons, and he continued to push my buttons over the years. And I had him back on the show, and he continued to just rip into me.
And speaking of which, there's something he called you in one of the shows. Should we look at that? That's quite a surprising quote right there.
Let's watch that video now.
And sometimes we exchange emails, and I'm like, why does Dan have to be such a cunt? Why does he have to push it? Why does he have to always want to win?
I'm being just the opposite of a cunt. You're a cunt, Brian, not me.
Explain.
You're weak.
And you're showing me I'm weak.
And you want these people to like you.
And you're telling me I'm weak on that email.
Yes.
Because you love me, because you care.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And you can be more than you are. If these little cunts think that you're something now, I see you 1,000 times more. See, they have low standards, these fucking weenies to watch this fucking thing. I don't. I know what you can be. They think you're a big fucking deal. I know you're not. And down deep inside, Brian, you know that I'm closer to being right than they are. You don't agree with me 100%, fine. But you know I'm closer to being right than they are. You're not the all end all shit. Who gives a fuck?
But won't you?
In the cosmos of time, you are not a fart in the wind.
No one is.
Exactly.
But won't you always want me to be 1,000 times better?
Absolutely.
5 years from now?
Just like if my daughter, who's a British citizen, I told BBC earlier today, and this rocked them. My daughter was prime minister, because she can be. It wouldn't be enough for me.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's real. And again, I guess I apologize for the language for anybody. Yeah, that happened. We were in these chairs, and that is the purest expression of Dan Pena, if you ever didn't know. He was going after me, and he was doing what he always does to me when he sees me. It's not good enough, Brian. And you think you're a big deal, you think you've done something, you've done nothing. And that's what he tells me every single time I see him, no matter what I do around here. It's never good enough or big enough. And I said there, you can see, I said, because you love me, because you care. And he said, yeah. And so every now and then you see a little sliver of Dan, the human. And I always say this to him. I said, Dan, like, you actually spend all of your time trying to make other people better. He's constantly of service. And he always says, no, this is about me putting my numbers on the board. I don't care about you. I just care about my numbers. But that's not true. We can all see through that. So in a weird way, Dan loves me more than anybody on this planet, because he goes out of his way to call me a cunt. He doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do that. Look how angry he was. He doesn't have to do that. If he really was selfish, he would just go make some money, which he could do. But he goes out his way to drag people across the goal line, as he would say. And he's been doing it for 27 years. And that's what it's like to be on the other end of Dan calling you that. And you can see in there, I'm trying to react to that. You know, I smile because I guess I'm uncomfortable. But it's not nice getting that from Dan. And I get that at dinner too. Like it's not just the show. Like I get that at dinner.
Off camera as well?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
And times 3. And he's drinking too. So I get it off both barrels.
Oh, no.
Last time I saw him, I got it both barrels.
Oh, no.
He's screaming in the middle of a restaurant, nice restaurant, yelling. So I get that. And again, you can look at it two ways. You can say he's a horrible, egotistic, alpha, all about the bucks. Or you can look at it a different way and say, wow, he must care because he's going out of his way to try to push you to be the best version of yourself. So again, it's been the craziest experience ever. And I guess to be continued.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the biggest takeaway was the fact that he called you this C word, which in the US is very politically incorrect.
Yeah.
And you smiling and keeping your calm, your composure, and just responding and saying, you're saying that because you love me, right? And it was such a beautiful turnaround, such a special moment, I find. But what was one of your biggest takeaways after meeting Max, besides all the craziness at the castle, or if you have one specific lesson?
With Pena, I mean, you know, we made a whole documentary film about him. He's been on the show. I went back to the castle. I mean, you know, Dan, I used to say this, and I'll say it again, as much as, like I said, I currently hate Dan. You know, when they made Dan, they broke the mold. There will never be another Dan Pena. He is politically incorrect. He's like your grandfather that some of us remember that told you how it was because your father couldn't. Either he wasn't there or he couldn't. And he's the last remaining person. He doesn't care about political correctness. He'll use a 4-letter word. He does not care. And there will be none of him like this anymore. And he will die, even though he says he's going to live forever, and he might. He might outlive me. Probably will. Even though that makes no sense, but he probably will. But you know, this is how Dan triggers you, and I've been used to him saying that word for a while. But again, you can look at Dan two different ways. You can look at it the ultimate expression of love, or you can look at him as the most evil bastard on this planet, and he is both at the same time. I think Ido Portal one time said to me on stage when we did his movie premiere, he said, you can judge a person's intelligence by the number of conflicting ideas they can hold in their brain at the same time.
Oh,
that is what Dan Pena is. He is something you cannot understand, and you got to take what you can with him. And again, he's been a huge part of London Real. I can't deny that. And I'll also say that we made Dan Pena famous, and he still thanks me to this day when he's not calling me 4-letter words. He said, "You made me famous on YouTube, and you changed the game." So we did. We created. That's the thing. We created Dan Pena. Think about that. If London Real is about the journey, if we're about the mass scale transformation of humanity into a fully empowered, conscious, and cooperative species, which is our tagline, and that's our mission, well, guess what? We created Dan. We really did. So there must be some good there. And he has kicked more butts. I get more people stopping me in the streets to tell me about how Dan Pena kicked their butt to do something they wouldn't normally do. And how much good has that created in the world? Anyways, that's how I live with myself. Either that or I'll pay for this in hell one day.
But the ability to shift perspectives like you did really showed that you're the master of your craft, and great respect to you, Brian, for doing that. Speaking of shifting perspectives, should we shift to the next clip?
Yeah.
Max Keiser?
Yeah.
That was pretty fun, right?
Yeah. Let's play that clip.
All right, cool.
Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to a friend of mine, Brian Rose. He's a banker turned TV impresario, just like me. He runs a thing called London Real TV in Silicon Real right here in London near Silicon Roundabout. And he's here today. Brian, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max. It's so nice to be here. We miss you on my show. You were on London Real and Silicon Real 3 different times. One of our most requested guests. You announced Start Join on our show, so it's...
That's right. It launched the whole thing on your show. Because over there on Silicon Real and the other properties that you're involved with, it's really interesting in that you are riding this wave of independent media. And the setup over there is fantastic. You know, you were the first guy that I know that used like little GoPro cameras and little cameras and set up your own mini studio. But the quality is excellent. And how did you make the transition? So you were in banking, as I was, and then now you're doing this. So how did that transition happen?
It's a great question, Max.
So that was me. I was wearing a suit and tie, so that's post-Castle with Pena. And Max invited me on his show. You know, it was a big deal, and that was my chance to kind of be on broadcast television. Max had been on London Real the year before, talking about Bitcoin, which is something you know a little bit about. So, you know, Max, again, has been trying to tell me about Bitcoin since 2013. He's been telling the world about it. Only recently, you know, have I actually paid attention. But Max has been banging about this forever. In 2013, I had him on the show, and I just bought some Bitcoin for 85 pounds. And we were both talking about the lack of liquidity. And now Max has just continued being a great evangelist for this whole ecosystem, and then, you know, change the whole world, including your life and my life now, right? Bitcoin is now at an all-time high right now as we speak, right? Yeah. Broke 67,000 earlier. And again, your entire company, SwissBorg, is in the DeFi space. We have a DeFi Academy. Every episode we publish for the last 6 months is about DeFi, crypto assets, and blockchain. So is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Bitcoin stepped up in honor of the 10th anniversary of London Real.
Today.
I think.
Today.
Yeah. And again, Max has been a tireless advocate for this.
Yeah.
And he taught me a lot. And Max is a great inspiration. He is the ultimate punk broadcaster as well. And it was great to go on his show. And he's been back on throughout. He moved in the building next to me. Him and Stacy came to Thanksgiving for me. They traded a Bitcoin at my Thanksgiving table with a Goldman Sachs guy who was at the table for $1,000. I don't remember what year it is. We can probably figure it out. 2015 maybe. And so Max has been amazing. And it's amazing how the space has developed, you know.
So these were two major milestones. Joe Rogan first, Max Keiser second as a guest. Were those kind of like pivotal moments from the beginning as we're talking about all the way to this point?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, and Pena was big.
Pena, yeah, of course.
Now it's getting some momentum.
Getting real, yeah.
It's getting real, and I'm getting serious,
yeah.
and I'm hiring people, and I'm just getting focused. I'm just getting focused. I'm just taking it really seriously now. I don't know. I just went all in. I don't know what I was doing before, but something it snapped at Pena's castle. And again, Pena didn't tell me something. He didn't put me in a corner. It was like the second day I came into his office and we had a meeting scheduled, and I said, I know everything I have to do. I got to do this, I got to do this. And he tried to say something. I said, let me finish. So I had just seen it, and now you start to see the momentum picking up as well.
And the next milestone is 2015, your amazing TED Talk.
The TED Talk, yeah, exactly. So that happened, and that was a big deal as well. Another big milestone. I think we got a clip from it right now. Here's a little bit from my TED Talk from 2015.
Awesome.
I was staying at his private chalet in the Swiss Alps in a small town called Verbier. And this place comes complete with an ice rink, spa, indoor pool, and an outdoor jacuzzi. And I was there with 40 of my clients and colleagues celebrating a great year in the banking industry. We were all from the City of London Financial Centre. And we were sitting back having our après-ski drinks after having a long day on the slopes. And the fireplace was roaring and the jacuzzi was steaming. And you could feel the buzz of the evening as we were trying to figure out what restaurant to go to, what club to hit afterwards. And I realized that I finally had everything I had been working my entire life for.
So there was my TED Talk, my first big public speaking event. Again, I'm introverted by nature. This was so hard for me to do. I memorized this entire talk, that 16-minute piece. I used to repeat it like 100 times. I used to walk around my neighborhood at night saying my whole talk back to back to back to back. I knew this was an important platform. And a few months earlier, I thought, why doesn't the host of London Real have a TED Talk? Like, that's stupid. And that's why I signed up for it. And this talk was a big changing point, because I could finally show the world that I had a plan and I had a vision. And before that, I never really showed that. And so it was a really big moment. I was super nervous. When I look back now, I cringe at my public speaking abilities, but at the time, that was a big milestone for me. Just slowing it down and creating that whole journey. And that talk really helped me start to recruit my team. It really did. Because before that, it was hard to get people to join because I didn't have a vision. And in that talk, I could show where we were going. And like I said, it was like right after that, we hired Julian Bales, hired Luis Solorat, who's my filmmaker for all of our major documentary films. And again, both of them, I think, volunteered for 6 months first, and then I started paying them. Like, that's how we started at London Real. That's how a lot of people started. But we started to now get some critical mass and get some people and do some things. And I think we found an old video of me shooting a vlog Saturday night at London Real Studios. And this is, I mean, again, for people that don't understand, like this is a 24/7 thing for me. I used to work Saturday and Sunday. I'm usually still here at the studios on Saturday and Sunday. I remember I joked one time, I got into an argument with my wife one time, and I came back at 3 a.m. and she said, "Where were you?" And I was like, "I was at the studio," right? So it's like when I default, I go to the studio, right? Like I don't go to the strip club, I don't go to the bar, I go to the studio. It's where I always go. I go to collect my thoughts, I go to create, So this is a clip from back then of me on a Saturday night with Julian and Luis. We're working on videos, we're building our academy, we're working on London Real. So here's a short vlog of that.
Love this video.
Somebody recently asked me what I do on a Saturday night, and that's a great question because I have so many options. But my favorite thing to do at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night is to hang out at London Real Studios with Luis, editing video in the background, and Julian Bales, working on conquering the world. So we're here in the studio. Doesn't anyone have a social life? No? This is it. This is what we do on Saturday. We're here working on videos. We're working on emails. We're working on the episode dropping tomorrow. I'm working on all the other things on the board, articles, press releases, memberships, all that good stuff. So just want to say hi. That's what we're up to. Some people wonder what we do in our spare time, and that's it. So let me know, what are you doing on Saturday night?
So like this video, like it says so much, you know, I mean, here are, you know, 3 guys on a Saturday night working, you know, and it's not like Luis and Julian didn't have better things to do. I mean, they could have been at a party, they could have been watching a football match, they could have been whatever. And they were here with me working on a project that had no end game, had no IPO plans, had no business model, but they just felt like we were doing something special. And so, yeah, I guess it just shows a few things. First of all, if you want to create something, you better make it your full-time business. And you better love it to where you want to be there on a Saturday night. We were clearly enjoying ourselves, but we were working. And then just to have people around us like that were just willing to just go the extra mile. And yeah, Luis is there. He made all of our documentary films with me. And again, like a lot of people were asking for permission to make a film. Who's going to fund my film? Is Channel 4 going to play my film? And the history of London Real is we don't ask permission. Yeah. We never ask permission. I didn't ask someone to teach me how to be a broadcaster. We didn't ask a television show to put our channel on. We didn't ask for funding. We just decided to do it. We're going to broadcast. We're going to make a film. We're going to premiere it at our own world premiere. And we're going to just keep doing these things. And so that was like the spirit, like just do it. And that's like this punk independent media vibe that like is throughout London Real. That sometimes is hard to put your finger on, maybe. So that's what that reminds me of. Yeah.
Is it the love, the passion, the obsession that helped you and the team not burn out? It's just because you had so much love for what we're doing, so much purpose that it helps you just keep on dragging on and not burn out, or like most startups.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure people have come through here and been burnt out. Julian's still with us. Luis has taken a break for a bit. You have to be here for a reason. You know, you have to be thinking about, I love the fact that we're putting out this content and we're having these conversations. You got to get a buzz off the guests coming in this studio because, like I said, there isn't necessarily an IPO at the end of the day. So I guess it just asks you why you want to be here. Also, there's no rules. It's chaotic. Mm-hmm. There's no breaks, again. So it's like we don't have seasons. We publish an episode every Sunday for 10 years. I've taught in my academy like 7 years straight at one point, like twice a week. We just didn't take a break, except maybe Christmas when someone couldn't show up for a call. So it was like, we just don't stop, and it's quite a pace. And I think that's why we're here. But again, it's kind of unique. So you have to kind of, I don't know why you're doing it, if that makes sense. It has to kind of pull you that this is something special, or you want to be a part of this, even if it maybe doesn't make logical sense sometimes. And I'm constantly conflicted. And sometimes we get signals that guests say no, and people cancel, and people don't like their appearances, and blah, blah, blah happens. And it's just, in my opinion, the world saying, how bad do you want it? are you going to step up to this challenge? Or are you going to quit? So it's always been a challenge here. Yeah.
Challenges are good. And so you went from the TED Talk to 2016, the summit.
Yeah.
That's the next big milestone, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to open up to the crowd. You're not just behind a camera, but you're there live with the people.
Yeah. Yeah, we did our first big live event called The Summit. We were not ready to do this. We had never done something like this before. We had people over the studio and done a couple small things, but this was a big deal. We didn't know what to do or how to do it, but we just decided to do it the London Real way. So I think we got a clip here of what we did at that summit, and here it is.
Awesome.
Elliott has something called active meditation, and it's a practice that I've started to use in my life. It's a way that Elliott expresses his physical energy.
More people have grown enlightened through dance than any other medium. The shaman is doing this. Very sense-oriented. He's very in his body. He's moving around, he's singing,
Who's in? Yeah? All right. Everything's gonna be okay.
So that event was crazy. We didn't know what to do. I decided to lead the crowd in something called active meditation, which Elllott Hulse taught me when he was here, which is this crazy thing to do. It's the most un-British thing to do, which means you jump up and down and you scream your head off and you fall on the ground. And I remember telling my team we were going to do this, and they were like, "Are you sure?" And I was on stage looking at hundreds of people at our first live event, and we had all this video, and we'd never done this before. And I thought, is anyone even going to do this? And I got up there and I said, we're going to do this. And I remember I put out my big scream, because if I don't go big, nobody's going to go big. And everybody went crazy. And I just thought, wow, we're on to something here. And then the rest of the event was amazing. Chris Eubank was there on stage. We had Wim Hof breathe. It was just amazing. But we did it our way. And now I do that at every live event. And we did one a couple of years ago at the summit with 1,000 people. And I'm up there in a 3-piece suit and everybody's screaming at the top of their lungs. And it's very London Real.
I love it. I get goosebumps when you do this. You have this like posture that you do. You go like this. It gives me goosebumps. That extract from the video is so cool. Yeah.
It's so big. And again, Elllott Hulse, like so many people have taught us lessons over the years, from Wim Hof with his breathing to Elllott Hulse with that. It's just like trying things out. You know, that's what we did with that. So and everyone responded. So it was fun. Events are really hard, but we forced ourselves to do it. Again, we keep forcing ourselves to just get out of our comfort zone and do these things. And it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And next milestone, 2017, Mantak Chia.
Yeah.
That was a unique one.
Yeah. Mantak Chia, again, a very interesting guest. Let's play a clip and I'll tell you what I thought of Mantak.
Cool.
And so the women practice on the egg. What do the men do?
Okay, the men, the first thing, they have to practicing that we call sharpening the knife. Okay, very important.
Okay.
So the whole key is very simple. You get the oil, we call the baby oil.
Baby oil, okay.
And you put it in. And now you put the peanuts, you warm it. In the cold winter, you warm them up. You get a hot towel.
Okay.
And you make it warm.
Okay.
And you put it here. Make sure all the blood flow.
Okay.
Okay. Now you get the peanuts out.
Yeah.
You pull the skin. A lot of people, they never circumstances.
Yeah.
So they have the skin. So you put the skin and you get the oil in the hand and you rub. Hand go like this. You rub. Especially on the gland penis. Rub them. 50 times, rest.
Okay.
Because you make them strong and not sensitive.
Okay. 50 times.
50 times one right side, 50 times left side, 50 times front, 50 times back, 50 times down.
That's a lot. Okay. How often am I doing this?
You have to do every day until you can control.
Every day? Jesus,
yes.
Master Chia. It's a lot.
If
my mom caught me doing that.
If you want to be good with it, you have to practicing it.
Okay. All right.
But when you get it, now when you make love, that's it.
Okay. So I'm sharpening the knife. That's what you call that.
So Alex, that is the single most watched video in London Real history. 7 million people have watched Mantak Chia talk to me about male sexual health, okay? And if you can't see from that video, I was extremely uncomfortable. I come from a Puritan country called America, where we don't talk about sex or sexual organs or sharpening the sword or any of the things that Mantak talks about. And I remember the night before, I went to my team and I said, who the hell are we having on the show tomorrow? Like, this is ridiculous. I can't talk about this, guys. I mean, I'd seen him, but like the night before, I was like, this is going to be horrible. And again, he starts talking about sharpening the sword and massaging your organs and all that stuff. But again, Mantak was one of our most popular guests ever. And he came back on the show 2 more times. He spoke at our event in London. And let me just say this right now. Mantak Chia is the man. He is OG gangster. He is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And he understands the human body from an Eastern perspective in a way that probably would give Western doctors a run for their money. This guy is one of the most impressive people I've ever met. He's in his 70s. He looks like he's in his 20s. He's just done crazy stuff, you know, and again, it's still some of our most watched clips ever. So again, get out of your comfort zone. Don't assume that you're right. And that's probably the big problem I see with traditional media, is that they make a judgment before they allow the person in the chair. And we try to put someone in the chair that's going to make me uncomfortable and challenge my points of view. And they usually end up changing my life. And that's the one thing I'll say. It's very dangerous, London Real, because whoever I bring into that studio usually changes the course of my life. And that doesn't happen on any other show. And that's what makes, I think, our show special. And Mantak Chia, man, trust me, go deep on this guy. He knows what he's talking about.
One of the reasons why we love you, Brian, is because you take that risk. You're never afraid of doing something, challenging yourself, putting yourself in some of the most uncomfortable positions, which is, by the way, one of the next clips. Something about skin brushing. I won't reveal more, but it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same year, 2017.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a clip of me and Steve Maxwell. So
Steve Maxwell.
Here it is.
All right.
Brian Rose! Good to see you, man. The skeptics out there are like saying, oh, where's the double-blind studies? You ain't gonna see any. You wanna do it now?
Yeah.
Let's do it, man.
Okay, let's do it.
It's London Real. Coconut deltoids, gladiator pecs, super 8-pack, Bruce Lee definition. Now it's time to work out.
To work out, all right.
"20 seconds, happy face, control. There you go. 15-minute workout. You can't be a lazy ass and expect your health to be good.
So this was one of many conversations I had with Steve Maxwell, who's just a fascinating dude. OG, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, used to train with the Gracie family before the UFC, was nomadic for many years of his life before that was a cool thing, and used to just travel the world. The guy's got to be in his 60s, but he's got these big, bright blue eyes. He's got a great spirit. He's got an amazing body. And I invited him back on the show, and he said, Brian, let's do something different. He's like, what about a hotel workout? And I said, okay. And I brought my camera crew over, and we went there. And then Steve has some weird practices. And I remember his eyes lit up when I said, okay, let's do the scrub brush. And he said, really, man? You want to do that right now? Let's go. And then he just, we scrubbed our bodies down. And what can I say? Steve knows what he's talking about, man. I still got to brush. I brush myself all the time.
Do you feel it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a great practice for your skin. So much stuff of what Steve says is just really good practice. And again, you would never know because this stuff isn't taught. It's not Western medicine. There's no revenue model. So you have to find somebody on a channel like London Real to do stuff like that. So, and there you go. And then you got to be willing to take all your clothes off. So what's the worst that's going to happen, right? So
to be honest, you were ripped. You looked quite good.
we both, when you take a screenshot of the two of us in our Speedos, but big love to Steve Maxwell, man. I love you, brother. I know you're out there and we'll see you again, but it was fun, man.
It was amazing. 2017 was quite the year because actually we have another very important guest that came on your show, and she's a very famous actress.
Yeah.
Should we move on to Priyanka?
Yeah, Priyanka Chopra. Let's show her.
Yeah, Priyanka Chopra. Let's have a look.
And I wasn't like that from the beginning. So confidence is something I taught myself over the years. I started becoming okay with who I am. I was nervous that how would America and global entertainment react to an Indian girl playing the American hero. But it doesn't matter, as long as you're convincing as a part. It's not the sympathy that you want, but oh my God, as a girl, you don't get the jobs. It's hard, we're willing to work for it, and we'll demand it. I feel like the more conversations that happen, the more people see examples like me playing the villain in Baywatch or Wonder Woman or so many female stronger characters that are coming out right now, the more people will understand that that's also entertainment. It has nothing to do with gender. I feel like destiny and hard work go hand in hand. There are some things that are inexplicable that happen. You have to be able to recognize opportunities. There'll be a lot of them that come into your life. And once you recognize an opportunity, you have to seize the day and work bloody hard.
So Priyanka Chopra, again, one of our most watched episodes ever. She, at the time, was starring in Baywatch with The Rock. And that movie was premiering in London. And we got a chance to interview her. We took everything in this studio here, including Johan, who's with us here as well, into the hotel and set up a live stream that we streamed in 5 cameras, and I interviewed Priyanka right there in the hotel. The next best thing was like Vogue had like a mobile phone and tried to stream on Instagram. So like our game was the best of anybody there, and there was like, she did 15 pieces of media that day because it was a big deal. And what I love about the interview is she just really opened up. She's really present. And let me say one thing about Priyanka. When she walked in the room, she's a movie star. There's a difference between a model. She's a movie star. Like she walks in with this presence. Aura, yeah. So she fills a room. And she told me in the chair, she's like, you know what, Brian? She's like, this isn't my first movie. I've done 50 Bollywood movies. So it's like she had been around, and she's just continued to just keep going up and up and up. And it was, I was just impressed with how present she was and how she really brought it. She talked about her father who had died, and it inspired her. And it was a big moment for us. And for us to pull that off in the middle of her media schedule, there was literally people sitting in the hallways trying to interview her, and she moved in that room and came on and brought it. We live streamed it, and it was just a great moment. And again, now we're starting to log these really big guests that then go on and have their own lives of their own. And again, each one of these makes London Real stronger. It gives us more reach, and it gives us the ability to have more guests on. And so we're starting to get a really good pace here. And so that's what, and I always really treasure those moments with Priyanka. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying about the aura. And speaking of pace, body movements, the master of movements, documentary film in 2017, still the same year. You had a crazy schedule. Yeah. Should we check out Ido Portal?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's see.
So people think it's about handstands and, you know, jumping on the rings and doing flips or whatever. And actually, our work is way, way beyond that. It's a completely different and a huge paradigm shift in the way that you think about your practice and your movement and your body.
And breathing now. And a small smile as well. Yeah, this smile relaxes you. It's connected with the mindset. Yeah, just a small stretch of the lips. A fake smile. Faking it until we are making it. Small smile and breath. Release the leg. Standing on 2 legs is the hardest thing. Now you can use it for balance. The right leg, it's a huge part of your balance. And now you place it when you're ready. Breathe. The fear comes in, wants to make contractions. You manage it. Don't eliminate it. You'll never eliminate it, but you play with it. You dance with the fear. Don't overuse me. You did it. Now you did it. You took that step. Nice. Nice. Nice.
So that's a little taste of Ido Portal. Again, one of the most incredible people I've had on this show, top 10 easily. And again, someone who uses movement and the physical body to get us out of our brains. He's really good at that. And Ido's also really good at challenging you and making you uncomfortable, something I like to do in my academies as well. And so he basically gets you to suck at something because that's the fastest way to learn. He said, you know, experts or perfectionists, that's boring. Professionals are boring. I'm going to give you something to do that is completely unfamiliar and challenging and difficult from a physical perspective, and watch your brain try to master this process. He calls it, I think, level 1 movement or learning versus level 3. Most people in a gym are at level 3. They're repeating something over and over again. I bench press, I walk on the treadmill. Level 1 is trying to learn a dance routine, trying to break dance for the first time. And so Ido, I had been hearing about him in the martial arts community, and they said, you got to get this guy on the show. And I was like, who is this guy? Ido came on the show. We had him on again and did a moving conversation in London with cameras on the street. The police were trying to shut us down. We were putting up Olympic rings on a tree, and like, it was crazy. But Ido was teaching us about movement. I went to one of his seminars. We brought the camera crew. I don't think he's ever allowed a camera crew except London Real in any of his studios or seminars. Like, there was a lot of trust. And then he invited us to come to Israel, and we went there and we filmed this movie called Just Move. So it was absolutely fascinating. Ido's probably the reason I breakdance. Ido completely changed the relationship I have with my body, and he inspired so many people. So just another incredible journey. And being there on that rail in Tel Aviv, that's perfect Ido. He sticks you on a handrail, which doesn't look very scary until you're up there. And he did the same thing to Conor McGregor after he started training him. There's footage of Conor on a rail in Los Angeles in a beach, like months before this, I think. And he tries to get you to deal with a situation you're unfamiliar with that makes your brain scared, even though the consequences are low. So he puts you in a kind of a high intensity, low risk environment and makes your brain learn and develop. And that's what Ido is all about. And he's really intense. And we had an amazing time with him in Tel Aviv. And yeah, we had some great conversations and great movies. So
speaking of amazing times, it was not the last milestone of 2017 as you transitioned to the new studio. Let's have a look at that clip together.
The good thing about facing your fears is that it gets easier every time.
You know, I'm a little obsessive and a little relentless, and I just knew this was the right path. I had a gut feeling, even though it made no sense financially.
This is the biggest challenge of my life, taking London Real to the next level. And I'm afraid again.
Gotta have a dream, man. Gotta have a motherfucking dream, man. But if you have that dream, there's nothing that can stop you. And now we're on a mission. To quote the Blues Brothers, we're on a mission from God. And there's nobody that can stop that.
Afraid of losing everything we've built. Afraid of forgetting my true message. Afraid of all the sacrifices I'll have to make. But I learned something on this journey. Your fears are only phantoms. Or as Dan says, false expectations appearing real. Fear is a good thing. It's a requirement if you want to change and grow. Where will we be in 1 year? I don't want to recognize us.
So the new studio is where we are right now, and it was a big difference than the video you saw of me with Julian and Luis, where it was literally my old flat. And it was literally, they were throwing us out of the building because it was like a residential. They were complaining. First they thought we were filming porn in there. Then they said it was an American radio show, whatever that means. And they were just like, what are you doing in there? We had like 12 people in there in one bathroom, and it was just, but it was time to step things up. And we got this new place here. It was like a concrete shell, and we designed it and we built it, and we couldn't afford it. And that's been the story of London Real. Like this made no sense. And if it wasn't for some of my mentors telling me to introduce risk into my life, to get uncomfortable, we wouldn't have done this. And yet, if it wasn't for the studio, we couldn't have done everything we did. So again, it was one of the scariest things we did. The rent was like, what? Compared to the previous thing. And it was like desks and all these build out and the costs. But I just was like, all right, trust this process, invest in this now, put yourself at risk, and it's going to pay off. And like, that's been the mantra of London Real. So a few of my mentors have taught me that over the years. Probably Dan Pena the most has basically said, you need to engineer risk into your life. And once I realized that, it was the biggest eye-opening moment I've ever had, because most people are too conservative and they're too scared. And as an engineer, I was taught to make sure bridges don't collapse and planes don't fall out of the sky. So I was taught to be extra careful with everything. On Wall Street, risk management. Look after all the risk. What about the long tail, curve position? What about? So I'm constantly too careful, which means I don't take enough chances. Most people don't take enough risk in their life. And so I'm still trying to constantly put myself in these situations that seem ridiculous, potentially damaging, potentially costly, and that's the only way we can continue to grow and scale. As one of my mentors would say, the difference between success and failure is on the razor's edge. And you probably know this as being an entrepreneur. You have to push it every single day if you want to stay relevant. And so moving to this space was a big thing.
Was this the moment where you're like, okay, I'm using my savings to survive and make this a reality, where you're starting to think, okay, now I can live with London Real? Was it starting to...
we were starting to get a business model. The Academy was gaining traction, but it still was is that still going to allow it to massively scale, and is it going to continue? And so it was starting to happen, but still this was basically saying, this is going to keep going big for the next 5 years. And you're signing a lease for 5 years, and you're doing an investment in the thing. We'd never done that before. Everything we had done was always conservative. Barely afford to buy a camera, barely afford to buy the lights, barely afford to hire out the theater at the premiere. It was always done with whatever we could make. So this was like an investment in ourselves that proved to be one of the smartest things we ever did. So it was big.
Talking about smart things and crazy things, if you can transition to 2018, one of the funniest videos, you took on one of the most daring challenges. I love, Brian, how you went into this. I don't want to spoil it, but let's have a look at the next clip. It is a very unique one.
Gosh. All right. Oh, is that enough? That's enough.
That's enough, bro. You're fine, yeah.
Okay,
yours are pretty clear. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus. Okay, so there you go.
Sparkling.
Wow, you got yours foaming and all that?
Yeah.
All right. If you want a close-up of that thing, that's me. It looks like kind of like champagne-ish color, white wine.
White wine, liquid gold.
Okay, all right, only on London
People
Real.
will drink Coca-Cola, they'll drink tap water without ever knowing what's in it. There's nothing in that that's not ran around your body already, that you've already consumed consciously,
Right.
It's from you, it's for you.
So it's a combination of everything I've put in my body intentionally.
Yeah, and it's like, this is too much minerals of this thing, so yeah, and it'd be...
Okay, let's do this, Timothy Shieff. Cheers, buddy. Okay. It's really not bad at all.
Just doing that with you brought back memories of the first time I did it, and that was, yeah. Good on you, Brian.
Like you said, just be present with it, and
Amazing.
So here it is. Yes, I drank my own urine. There you go. When I was running to be mayor of London, a bunch of blogs out there thought they had got me and discovered this video, but it was on my YouTube channel the whole time. I was actually trying to get people to watch this. That's why I published my videos. And so, again, this is another moment where a guest sits in the chair and says, Brian, I'm going to challenge your perspective. And most of the guests that sat in the chair, I didn't agree with what they said when they first got here, from Dan Pena to Mantak Chia to all these people. So Timothy Shieff, who's been on the show many times since early days, always is a pioneer of thought, I would say, about Timothy. And he was like, yeah, I'm drinking my own urine. And I know that Lyoto Machida, the UFC fighter, used to do the same with his father. And he's like Brazilian of, I think, Japanese background, I think.
Yeah.
And so I'd heard of it being done. I knew that like Navy SEALs would do it if they were in desert training. So I knew it wasn't just completely crazy. But again, doing it is another thing. But that's what London Real is all about. So I thought to myself, what's the worst that's going to happen? Trust me, drinking urine is much easier than drinking ayahuasca, for example. It's much safer than drinking tequila, and I've drank a lot of that in my past. So at the end of the day, why not? So I did it with Timothy live here. I drank it, and guess what? It's not that bad. And so when I had little boys and they would pee on things, I'd be like, well, it shouldn't bother me if it's on my hands because I've drank urine before. So again, it was a moment that, again, when I ran for mayor of London, they tried to like throw up there, and it made all the headlines. But it's part of who we are here. So I did it, and I'm glad I did it. I don't do it regularly. That's what all the media wanted to ask me when I was running Mayoral London. Do you still drink urine every day? So, but I'm not scared of doing it, and I did it a few times. And so there it is. It's probably the epitome of London Real right there.
Keeping it real at London Real, it was definitely a very unique moment, and I love the fact that you have the courage to do so. Talking about keeping it real, IRONMAN. IRONMAN was such an amazing documentary. Should we have a look at it?
Yeah, let's look.
A strong body builds a strong mind. That's why I'm pushing you to do this race. Because it teaches you that you can do anything you set your mind to and smash the limitations that we place upon ourselves. This is not Pussy Man. This is Iron Man. Protein. Are you going to make me race by myself, or are we crossing the finish line together?
Okay.
No pressure.
So there you go, another day in the office at London Real. I get challenged by a former punk rocker who's a Hare Krishna monk and a vegan to run an Ironman within 90 days on a plant-based diet. So that's what happened. John Joseph, he's what he looks like. He's a hard-talking New Yorker, lead singer of the Cro-Mags, big punk band in the 90s in New York City. And he challenged me to do this Ironman race, and I accepted. So went to New York and trained with him and learned how to do this whole thing, plant-based diet. It was a really, really intense experience. And I went down the whole road of all of that process.
That was incredible. You took on the challenge, and then you also asked him, what is the next challenge after just finishing the Ironman? That was so much respect for that, but there's also a very special moment, a very special conversation. Should we look at the next clip? Yeah. All right.
I want to show you this, and then we can talk about it, and we can talk about it a lot more.
Show me.
You want to see it?
Yes, I want to see it.
Okay. Here we go. What do you think?
Come, baby. It's made you who you are. You're so strong. You're so strong. Yeah. Very proud of you. Hey. You did good.
How is that good?
Yes, it's very good.
How? It's a pretty rough thing, though, to tell everybody about.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. You're not seeing what I'm seeing.
What do you see?
It had to happen to make you who you are. Yeah?
Thanks, babe.
Harry, nah?
Yeah, Harry.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. You're not impressed? You want to slap me?
Yeah.
Come on, slap me.
Yeah, so that was a very emotional part of that movie. You know, it wasn't just an Ironman race. It wasn't just swim and bike and run. It just opened up my whole past to me, and I had to talk about it. So yeah, that movie was really intense. I went to New York City. I trained with John, and when I was in New York City, I was reminded of all of the horrible things I did to myself when I was in New York that I never talked about with anybody. And they just came out in all the training, and I started crying in front of the cameras, and they were like, what the hell's going on? And I got to sit down with John Joseph in New York City, and he told me about his sexual abuse, and I talked about my heroin overdose. And so that we decided to put in the movie And up until the night before, we were actually doing a weekly series before the movie. And up to the night before, we were like, are we really going to put this in? Are we just going to say Brian suffered from an addiction? And then we were just like, is this real? Is this London real? Because if this is fucking London real, then you have to be real, you know? So we decided that we would put the whole I had a heroin overdose public for the first time ever. So I had been holding that secret for, 16 years. Never told my wife, never told anyone else. A couple friends of mine knew in New York City. And then I told everybody in that standpoint as well. That's also the first time I ever told my wife. So I decided to make that episode for her, and I took it home and I played it for her. So that's the first time she ever knew that I was an addict and abused this, what's considered probably one of the most disgusting drugs in the world that only, losers and bad people use. And for me to admit that I was addicted and overdosed, it was like a big deal. Obviously, I'm a little emotional about it. And so that was what Iron Mind opened up. And so I had that conversation with my wife, and then I told all my fans, and then we broadcast it out. And I thought everybody would hate me and sell me out. And then instead it was the opposite. Everybody just said, me too. My father, my wife, my husband, thank you for being honest. So the whole movie stopped being about a guy on a vegan diet running and swimming and biking, and it became about a guy using this as a process to go into inner demons and then talk about them publicly. And if it wasn't for John Joseph talking about him being sexually abused as a young boy, I don't know if I would have opened up about the heroin story. So thanks to John, I could tell that. And after I told this story, I felt like I got launched forward because I wasn't trying to hide this story. I wasn't embarrassed. Actually, one of the darkest moments of my life became this beacon of hope and this light for so many people around the world. So this horrible, crappy, darkest, shittiest moment of my life that I thought would never serve any purpose except to make me feel horrible turned out to be something that millions of people could watch and say, that really helped me. So yeah, that's what ReConnect was about. I told my wife, you thought that was hard. Then I had to tell my daughter. That was even harder than telling my wife. And after I told her, she was like 13. And she said, wow, that was really brave. And she gave me a hug and then she walked off. So for her, it was okay. But for me, it was a big deal. So that was Iron Mind, man. It was it was a big deal, and it was a great film. And yeah, I was just grateful to do it. And now I talked about it, and now I don't have anything to hide. It's just like, yeah, that's part of my life. And I bring it up all the time, sometimes with guests, and I'm like, here's my Ironman race. And I talked about my heroin overdose, and they're like, what? Because it's not what they would expect from me. But it's the truth, and it's what happened. And if we can all own our own truth, I think it helps us. So that's Iron Mind.
Is that the most beautiful takeaway, just being vulnerable, the power of the vulnerability? What's the lesson that you've learned through this?
Yeah, so in the London Real Academy, we have 5 rules. They are respect, love. Rule 3 is vulnerability. So we demand everybody to get vulnerable. The 4th is action and accountability, and the 5th is fun. I always forget the 5th. And so the 3rd is being vulnerable. So everyone on London Real gets vulnerable. Where all the guests come on and they bare their soul. They tell me what's going on. And so do my students. And so it was time for me to do the same. And I have done that in the past, and I tried to show my failures. But this was a chance to really find out if you were going to eat your own dog food, as they say in Silicon Valley, right? Or if you were really going to do what you preach. And that's when I looked at my crew, and we were like, we got to publish it. And again, they were with me in New York when I did that whole confession on the sofa, man. That was very emotional. And they were with me the whole way. So big shout out to the Iron Mind crew and everybody who made that happen, Luis, my filmmaker, and the whole crew. It was special and a really good moment. And again, the lesson for everybody else is that by putting that to bed, it launched me forward in so many ways I can't describe, Alex. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Why would me confessing about something that happened in 2002 that no one would have ever found out about help me go forward? But it did. So I'd say to everybody out there who thinks or is scared that someone's going to find out something that's going to hurt them, I would just ask them to really think about that. Is that really what's going to happen? Or is it just a fear paradigm you live in all the time that stops you from taking all of these actions? Most of us are prisoners in our own mind. Yeah. And most people would think, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. Look at the risk, look at the risk, look at the risk. Or you can just be you, serve others, create the most wonderful content, do the right thing, pass something on that's wonderful. And if you are part of the damage of that or the collateral, so be it. I think if so many people could stop living in a prison in their own mind of their own fears, I think the world would be an incredible place. So that's the lesson. Again, I'm still learning that lesson, but that one taught me a lot about that.
Definitely a tear-jerking documentary. It made me tear up as well. And thank you so much for sharing all those amazing moments.
And you got me to cry. So congratulations. You're a good host.
It's Superman and it's kryptonite, So that's... that was a beautiful way to wrap up 2018. Obviously, 2019 was also extremely meaningful for London Real. And of course, for you, Brian, kicked off with Dan Bilzerian. That was one incredible piece of footage right there. Should we watch a clip?
Yeah.
All right.
If you could teach guys like one thing or two things about women, what would it be? What would you tell them?
Don't chase. Don't chase. And don't be afraid of rejection. Don't be afraid of rejection. My strategy in college would be every time I would see a hot girl, I'd just go up and talk to her. I didn't care if it was in a fucking grocery store, if it was in a library. Like, if I saw a girl that I found attractive, I would just go talk to her. And I wouldn't go up and say, oh, I think you're beautiful and all that cheesy bullshit. I would just go talk to her about whatever. Like, didn't matter. You just have a conversation with her. See where it went, Sometimes it didn't go anywhere. Sometimes they wouldn't want to give you the time of day. Sometimes you'd have a casual conversation, lead nowhere. But at the end of the day, because I did that, it would just make me more comfortable talking to girls. And it was just kind of a numbers game. So
now you have us talking to Dan Bilzerian about how not to chase women. Welcome to London Real, right? Again, a lot of people were offended by this video. A lot of people were offended by Dan Pena. A lot of people are offended by Mantak Chia. That's what we do here. We try to have real conversations with real people. And I don't assume that someone is something I think they are without giving them a shot. And a lot of people, they make quick judgments on so many people in this world, including Dan. You see him, he's the modern day Hugh Hefner, kind of, right? Yeah. He has like a better version of the Playboy Mansion. He does what he wants to do with as many women as he wants to, and he just lives this, out there life. And so I thought, why not put him in the chair and find out who's this guy about? Because every time I put someone in the chair, I realize, wow, they have a real journey that I can learn from, and they're not who I thought they were. They usually face some tough challenges. So I really like Dan. It's an interesting video. It's interesting to watch that now because, I think a lot of men struggle with how to relate to women. And you can see Dan with a version of how he does it. And Dan is like, this is the way I do it. And not everyone has to do it that way, but I think that's the beauty of London Real. And so we had a really good conversation with Dan. Again, one of our most watched videos. So clearly people are interested, and I'm always interested to sit down with someone and have a good talk. And so we'll have Dan back on again, and we'll continue, hopefully, to probably upset people with some of the people we put in the chair. Again, you can not watch, or you could try to listen and learn, or you could disagree. But it's always good to have that conversation. But yeah,
I think the variety of perspectives is what makes London Real so powerful and so magical, right? It's seeing different lessons from life from different people with different stories.
And it's fun. It was fun sitting down with Dan. It really was.
Definitely was.
It really was.
And speaking of different perspectives, let's move to Lessons from War with Jocko Willink. Intense episode.
Yeah. It was intense. Jocko's very intense. I think we got a clip of a conversation I had with him on the HMS Belfast here in London. That's a warship that's parked in the River Thames. We were at night, and Jocko was talking to me about some of his intellectual property. So here's that video.
The biggest obstacle is their ego, right? That's the biggest obstacle is we don't want to take the blame for when things go wrong. We want to blame everyone else. And if your boss isn't giving you what you need, that's not your boss's fault. It's your fault. If your team isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's not your team's fault. It's your fault. You're the one that's in charge of the team. You're in charge of them. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, it's your fault. And when you do take ownership of a situation, it starts to spread through the organization. If I say to my team, hey guys, this wasn't your fault, this was my fault, here's what we're gonna do to fix it, my team looks at me and says, you know what? We should have done a better job. They don't say, yeah, you're right, it's your fault. They don't do that. They say, we should have done a better job. I should have owned this. I should have stepped up. And now you start to have an organization where everyone on the team takes ownership, and that's a totally different, that is when you become unstoppable.
So we had Jocko early on the show. It was like literally like a month after he was on Rogan and Tim Ferriss. And we reached out and he was in London and boom, he was in the studio. And again, Jocko is super intense. He is the Navy SEAL we all read about and saw in the Hollywood movies. And yet he is that guy times 10. And Jocko made a massive impression on me when he came on the show the first time. And his book, Extreme Ownership, and his concept of extreme ownership are something we still teach to this day in our DeFi Academy and the London Real Academy. It's one of the mindsets that we teach before we even talk about any kind of crypto assets. It's extreme ownership, this concept that everything in your life is in your control and it's your fault, and that you should be able to make a change in that. So your boss is a jerk, not their fault, your fault, because you haven't found a way to relate to them. You know, your business got shut down, not the government's fault, your fault, because you didn't innovate. So that is a way that leaders think, because they look for solutions and they try to get their teammates to look for solutions. And it's one of the most difficult concepts to process. And Jocko has taught me so much from afar, from his books, from being on the show. And he's continued just incredible stuff. He's got an amazing podcast. He's got an amazing brand. And yeah, he's just an incredible asset. And again, I teach his concepts to my students, and I'm so glad. He's been a big part of London Real, and he is the real deal. Yeah, he's the real deal. We actually have a really funny video on our website of Jocko when he's basically telling me how he's not the most social guy. He doesn't do birthday parties. And he said, after this interview, Brian, he's like, I'm not going to text you. I'm not going to call you again. And my team like played this like sad voice with this like Ben Affleck thing, you know. And so Jocko thought that was the funniest thing ever, that I was kind of sad. And so Jocko does have a sense of humor. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and from San Diego, California, where I'm from. Yeah, a big part of the show in so many ways. So yeah, big love to Jocko. And yeah.
That extreme ownership reminds me of the golden circles of Stephen Covey, what you cannot control, what you can control, what you can influence, so that you take that extreme ownership, which is a great, great lesson. I love it. And speaking of intense guys and strong guys, why don't we transition to your video with Eddie Hall? That was an amazing one. I almost cried.
Let's go.
It was on my nan's deathbed that when my nan died, I was the only one there in the hospital. Sorry, it's a tough thing to talk about.
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate you talking about
it. And as I say, it was she was the only person I could talk to about my dreams, and I would never get anything negative back. You know, she always believed in me. Come on, Dad. And on her deathbed, when she died, I was the only one there. And when they put you in a room with the deceased, and you can have your private time with him. I just remember talking to my nan for hours on end about my life, about these about my dreams, about my aspirations. And the strongman came up. It was, a few months after I did the strongman contest and said I was going to win the world's strongest man. And I made the promise to my nan on a deathbed that I would win the world's strongest man one day.
So there is the world's strongest man, in my opinion, being super strong, right? He's showing us that he's real, that he's emotional, and most people had never seen that side of Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall is known for having the biggest deadlift in the world of 500 kg. I think he still owns a record, maybe not, doesn't matter. He's currently on the set of Expendables 4 with Sylvester Stallone and Jason Statham. He's taken his life to the next level. But if you want to know what drives this man to do this stuff, and Eddie Hall works hard, like to become the world's strongest man, like the schedule he puts on, this guy works. To see where it came from, it's all there, you know? It all came down to a promise he made to his grandmother on her deathbed. And that's deep, man. I mean, I tear up just watching that, you know? And it's just, I felt so fortunate that I could hold the space for him in here and create that moment that so many people worldwide can see Eddie. Because most people see Eddie, he's really funny, he's got a great Instagram, he does amazing physical things, but most people don't get to see that that all comes from somewhere, which is a place of pain or emotion or a promise. So that was a beautiful moment. And I got to thank Eddie for going there, because he could have chosen not to, and he did. So that's a strong man.
I think you deserve kudos as well, Brian. Obviously, Eddie did go there, but you had such a masterful, craftful way of getting him to open up. You know, a lot of the hosts we see on different shows, they always need to fill the blanks. They always need to interject something, but you let him go. You looked at him, you're listening, you're showing empathy. You're saying, please tell me more, explain, pausing, the power of pausing. I mean, really, like, I felt like that was a magical moment again on London Real, thanks to your ability to let people communicate and share their deepest stories.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. I mean, I always say, if I do my job right, I just shut the fuck up. Like, that's my job, really. You know, and so if I'm really doing it right, we've created the atmosphere, we put the person in the chair, and then my job is to listen and to hopefully take them into these places. And again, that came after maybe 90 minutes of talking about his whole life. And there's a lot more there. There's a lot of depth with him. He was, you know, nearly suicidal at one point. Really, not the guy you would expect him to be. And we got him there. But, you know, I've had a lot of very strong men cry on my show. And I'm not saying it's a metric that I shoot for, but if you cry on London Real, like I did just a few minutes ago, then it means we're getting somewhere important. You know, everybody has an emotional side, and it's nice for all of us to see that side. And I've had world championship boxers like Nigel Benn cry for like 2 minutes straight. This is the Dark Destroyer, one of the scariest guys in the world, who 2 hours before I did a face-off with, and he was yelling at me, saying, "This is a face-off," you know, like that, right when I met him. And then 2 hours later, he's crying in the chair about his moment when he found, you know, God and changed his life and, you know, realized what he was doing to his family. So that's what we're trying to do here at London Real. We're trying to tell you someone's story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the journey of their arc that usually included some down to get to the up. So yeah, it's something we're very fortunate to be able to do.
And we're very fortunate to watch and experience these moments. And 2019 had another amazing moment, probably one of my favorite videos, Robert Kiyosaki. What a video. That went viral as well. Should we have a look? Yeah. All right.
You're fulfilling your true purpose if you commit your life to the highest advantage of others. I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad because I'm serving a mission to serve my fellow human beings. Because the school system will never teach you about money. They teach people to be poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time, because it's an escape. The reason they're poor is they haven't failed.
It's that fear mentality. You play it safe and you don't introduce new risks into your life.
We gotta change what we teach our kids.
Introduce a real different mindset.
How can I afford it? How can I do that? A question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. One of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. So my game financially is business, number one. Second is real estate. And that's why I pay no taxes.
Legend, Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That video was a special time. I got to go to Phoenix, Arizona, and I got this entire studio space, and I got to sit down with Robert. And that video has been watched tens of millions of times. I actually caught a version of that video where our voices are dubbed in Russian. Seriously, we're both speaking in Russian. So like that video has been copied and dubbed and just around the world. He's one of the top 5 guests I get asked about. And I reread Rich Dad, Poor Dad on my flight to Phoenix, Arizona when I went to go talk to him. And I'm telling you, within the first 15 pages, I'm like, this stuff is genius. It's not really about money. It's about It's about life. It's about the human perspective and how we were born into this, into this incorrect relationship with our money. A lot about what you guys do at SwissBorg and what we're doing now with the DeFi Academy. We're born into this world where we're told that you're not smart enough to understand your money. We're born into this world where we say you have to wait for a paycheck every 2 weeks. And again, as Robert Kiyosaki once said, and this offends everybody, poor people work for money and rich people make money work for them. And again, that offends a lot of people out there. But Robert is trying to say, as Grant Cardone would say, get your money right, invest in assets is what he's trying to say, and try to get a relationship with your money. And as Robert said, when he was a kid, he raised his hand in school and said, when are we going to learn about money? They said, well, we don't teach you about money at school. He said, but you're teaching me chemistry and Spanish and math and physics. Why don't you teach about money? And we don't teach money here. So it's all down to our education system, which came from, the Industrial Revolution in Britain, which came from a place to keep factory workers' kids while they became future factory workers. So our entire education system is prefaced on the fact that you're not smart enough to understand your own money. And when Robert drops that science, people feel that he's telling them the truth, just like they feel Dan Pena is telling them the truth, or Ido Portal, and that's why they connect with Robert. And again, Robert, like Dan Pena, is in his 70s, doesn't care about political correctness, it doesn't care about attacking everybody out there, including the teachers' unions. And then he tells it like it is. And again, let me just say this. The truth is a commodity that is very scarce these days. Very few people are willing to tell you the truth. And it sounds simple, like, what are you talking about, Brian? The truth, I can get that anywhere. No, you can't. You can't find someone that's willing to tell you the truth because they have some other angle, a reputation, a product, they're being censored. So getting the truth is something we crave as humans. Yeah. And people are drawn to Robert. And I love Robert. He's been on the show many times and he's got such great lessons. And I feel like we're actually taking the baton from Robert and continuing to go into the future with everything I think we're both doing in DeFi. I think we'll take those teachings even to a new level. And we'll talk more about that hopefully at the end. But Robert's just a gem and there's something just big happening there.
You have 3 beautiful kids. Is Rich Dad Poor Dad one of those go-to books that you'll recommend your 17-year-old to say, listen, you need to learn about money, read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yeah, I'm strangely enough, I'm getting my 17-year-old daughter Gabby, into DeFi and crypto, so she's got her own hot wallet and all of that stuff. So is my mom. She's 76 years old. Cool. But my young sons, Caden and Damon, they're 4 and 5 years old. And right now they're in the school system. And so I'm having to ask myself some hard questions. Sure, their dad's gonna be me. So that's gonna come with pluses and minuses. So I want to apologize in advance to my sons. First of all, I've put you on camera around the world and you've got to deal with me being your dad at school, which I'm sure has a lot of downside. But the upside is that I'm going to be constantly teaching you the lessons that I've learned. And I think it was Mark Twain that said, don't let your school get in the way of your education. Yes. So yes, I'm going to try to instill these core values in them from the beginning. Hopefully they'll see it by my actions, right? That's the way kids, they respond to your actions, not what you tell them. So hopefully they'll see me, investing in assets and taking risks and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope we can pass this on. But again, when Robert goes, they won't make another one like him. Same with, goddamn Dan Pena. They won't make another one like him. We have to get these lessons from these people, man. And so it's an honor that we've captured that video. That video of Robert could be watched for the next 10,000 years.
So.
You cannot replicate the energy of that video. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And again, just what I try to do, honestly, Alex, is I try to channel the info. So when I'm in that chair, I got to get out of the way, channel the info into the other person, right? The info from wherever it is out there in the universe into someone's brain, which then goes back into the rest of us and just keep that flow. And if I'm doing that, these videos, they take a life of their own on. So I never thought that video would pop, but it did because we captured something real and something truthful. So
it is real and truthful, and it is really one of my top 3 books for my daughters growing up. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and maybe a 4th, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those 4 books are those I'm gonna definitely share with my daughter, even read chapters for her when she's going to sleep, because it's like you said, there's so many insights and amazing interview.
Yeah, I like that, reading a good story. Every night I go home and I read my 2 boys a story. It's big thing story time. And so we have a whole process. We have stuffed animal and stuff. And so right now we're reading, Super Tato, and there's some good books out there. But I'm starting to try to introduce lessons and ideas, bravery and just these things. And so I'm going to probably start pulling these things in, introducing these lessons, during story time.
I would love to learn that from you. Speaking of lessons, you started taking breakdancing lessons. Should we check out the next clip?
Yeah.
All right.
So that was me, 2020, lockdown, no gyms, in my studio doing my breakdancing. And again, big shout out to Ido Portal, who kind of reminded me that breakdancing was a thing. I think I was doing a lizard walk at one of his trainings, and I thought, wow, this reminds me of breakdancing when I was a kid. The other kids used to do it. I saw it when I went to New York City, when my mom took me there. I'd never practiced it, and I just fell in love with this incredible form of expression, history, urban struggle and strife, all wrapped up into this dance. There's some of the most incredible athletes in the world. Expression, music, fashion, vibe. Breakdancing taught me so much. I couldn't even dance before, white boys can't dance, but it takes a lot to get a man to dance. How many weddings do you go where the guys won't dance because it involves expression? So breakdancing's taught me so much. I just trained a couple hours ago with my breakdancing instructor, who's going to be in the Paris Olympics representing Morocco. So I've been blessed to have people like Crazy Legs on the show, Storm from Europe on the show.
Legend.
I've gotten to train with Menno, who's a BC1 champion. I got to train with Victor, who's a BC1 champ. I've been really lucky. And again, I'm still learning. It took me 4 or 5 years to get a windmill. And I know you have some experience. And so I love the art form. And again, most people think that's weird, that me at 50 years old that wears 3-piece suits is breakdancing. But for me, it just seems so obvious. So I love it, and I want to give huge respect to the breaking community and everything they do, because it's beautiful.
It's incredible, right? The community. I mean, we had a story where, for me, it's all about the borderless culture, which reminds me of blockchain, borderless technology, borderless money, which is Bitcoin. But we had an experience with my brother in 1998. We went to Harlem to go do a show. We saw this sign saying breakdance event. We go to the event, and it was all Black American, African American. We're the only white guys there. And it was a bit scary. It was a barbecue. And 98 is still, the culture was starting to change. But we arrived there and we started dancing, and we were welcomed as one. We were one community. And despite the fact that we were scared to death, they just really welcomed us, open arms, gave us hot dogs. And even little kids came up to me, hey boy, can you teach us a move?
Yeah.
So it's all about connecting with that culture, right?
I follow breakdancers from Japan and South Korea and South America and all of these cultures. And everybody is immediately connected because we all understand it's an expression. It's you putting yourself out there. It's you trying something. It's you failing. It's you staying persistent. If you breakdance, you have failed. Everything hurts. You've gone back and back, and you're respecting the art form, the culture, the music. It came out of the Bronx, and everything's a nod to this whole art form, and it's hip hop. And remember, I had Ice-T on the show, an incredible, one of my favorite hip hop guys, and he did a reality show back in the day, and there was these young kids that he went to a private school, and one of them did a rap, and he said that's hip hop. He said it's being confident in yourself, expressing yourself. And, everybody's got something in them. Everyone's got something to show. And that's what breakdancing does. Show me. Do it. Be you. Be the best you. And you're right. It cuts through all cultures, all languages. And I'm not surprised you had that experience.
It was incredible.
And you're right. It is similar to blockchain. And it just cuts through. People get it. And again, you can't fake it. People know right away. who you are. They know who you are as well, because it all comes out. So yeah, it's an amazing form. I love it. I'm going to be doing it all the way to the end.
You practice together, of course. And speaking of connecting cultures, ReConnect, which is to me my personal favorite documentary. So much meaning behind it. Should we have a look at the trailer? Yeah. All right.
We're in a dark age. We've lost our compass. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we want to go. What is to be done?
It's going to take some consciousness change to get us out of the box we're in.
La maldición de ayahuasca, nosotros podemos conectar con esa persona y se da cuenta dónde está la raíz del problema de él. Pues ahí se trabaja.
Sometimes I feel anxious and unappreciative of the things I have.
There's no such thing as work-life balance. There are work-life choices, and you make them, and they have consequences.
What we don't understand about psychedelics is a very thick book. They can help you orient yourself morally, but look the hell out.
You don't always get what you want with ayahuasca, but you always get what you need. The diseases of individual are the diseases of the world. Our culture, soul, is severely wounded.
Humanitarian crisis growing by the day.
Global warming is the greatest fraud that's been perpetrated on mankind this century.
When you take these lessons in, it's kind of a process to make sure that it comes into yourself. Some of the hardest work is when you go home. Integration means bringing things into the whole person.
Maybe we should be considering that the depth of human experience is more than just material things and technology and our egos.
We all get stuck in a mold. That's what can happen with ayahuasca. You get that mold, and she fucking smashes it on the floor. Now, what are you gonna do? Now, who are you?
Heavens are collapsing. This is the time to change. If you want to raise human consciousness, there has never been a better time.
La ayahuasca nos fortalece nuestra mente, nos abre nuestra creatividad, nuestro amor, nos conecta uno a uno mismo.
Treno ayahuasca supai kuna
So ReConnect was a really intense 18 months of my life where the plant medicine called me back. And the early viewers of London Real will know that I think it was within the first 10 episodes, I decided to publicly talk about drinking ayahuasca, which is something I'd never done before, which is a plant medicine. They say there's 1,000 years of history. It is a psychedelic, a little bit like a psilocybin mushroom or LSD. And it's designed to give you a new perspective, is what it is. It's also, for me, a very uncomfortable experience. A lot like going to see Dan Pena. I'm usually told a lot of things I don't want to hear about things I'm not doing right in my life, and there's nowhere to hide. So again, everything was going pretty good here at London Real, and Dennis McKenna, who's the brother of Terence McKenna, who was one of the most famous commentators on the psychedelic experience, who died in, I think, 2000, had been on the show, and he said, Brian, you need to come down to Costa Rica with me and drink ayahuasca. And I said, Dennis, what I need to do is work on my business and work on London Real. And he said, no, you need to do this. And so I flew down with my crew to a place called Soltara, which is an incredible, a place that holds these experiences. And I had 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. The second one being the single most intense experience of my life, and the single most meaningful experience of my life. And yeah, it really forced me to come to terms with what I was doing or what I wasn't doing. And then once you do the ceremonies is where the real hard work starts. because you get these visions of what you should be and what you need to do and all the things you're doing wrong, and then you get to come back to reality where no one knows what you're talking about and the world is conspiring to keep things the same.
Yeah.
And it's called integration in the psychedelic community, and it's one of the hardest things to do. And I came back and I told my wife how I had seen everything we were going to change, and she thought I was crazy. I told my team everything we were going to do differently. I told myself, and then a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, it's not happening. And it's one of the most frustrating experiences. And so we tried to capture that in the movie and show that transition. And I was blessed to rope in any guests on London Real and stick them in my documentary without permission as well. So we were really fortunate to have people like Dr. Jordan Peterson on there, and Michael Pollan, and Sadhguru, and all of these incredible people, Joe Dispenza, that kind of wove into the tale. And then, of course, at the end, I went home to see my parents.
Oh my God.
And I asked them about their divorce, which was a big moment for me when I was 7 years old. And I got my dad on camera, who I don't think was very happy about that, and my mom on camera, and both asked them independently about that. And the biggest lesson I got is that they didn't do anything wrong. They were just living their lives, and I would have probably done something similar. But to me, I had just created this as a situation, and I had relived this situation and made myself a victim of this situation. And so the biggest learning lesson with ReConnect was just move on. Move on. And look at what it gave me. It gave me, I mean, if you look deep at it, Alex, I've been searching maybe for a male role model my whole life. And maybe London Real is me continuing to search for a male role model. If you really want to analyze me, let's be honest. Like, who are these people, right? There are these people that maybe I'm trying to learn from. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to fit together the pieces. And it's given me all this intensity to do this. So I have to thank my mom and my dad. They did an amazing job raising me. Relationships are always really challenging. And yeah, they got divorced when I was 7, and I took it personally. And it's something I tried to come to terms with in that movie.
Is it really worth doing that? Because a lot of people have had these traumatizing moments when they're children. And I've had them as well. And it's very difficult for me to kind of figure out, should I talk to my parents about this? Should I let go? Or should I just move on? Like, what was your final lesson from that whole experience? Was it really worth doing it? Did it feel like you were releasing some luggage, or finally getting rid of something that was bothering you throughout the years?
Look, it's a good question, and it probably wasn't fair for me to put my dad on the spot and ask him that question. And I don't know if he's forgiven me. So my dad's watching. I just want to say, Dad, I love you, and I'm kind of sorry to put you in that situation, but this is what I do. I create, media that sometimes is the wrong thing or upsets people, but I had to kind of do it. And I did it for my mom as well. What it helped me do is I actually got to see it from their perspective. Yeah. My dad was just like, look, I was living my life. I was trying to work on me and support the family, and your mom and I weren't getting along anymore. And the older I get, and I have kids now, I realize it's not as simple as you think it is when you're a kid. And for me, it was this big moment in my life that I decided would redefine me somehow. Yeah. And that was a decision I made. We recreate our own past every single day. Yeah. Like, we retell ourselves the story of what happened. That didn't happen necessarily. I could tell it in a completely different way. And so that's what I did. I looked at that as one of the greatest gifts I've ever had, because it made me independent. It made me realize that I had to go get it myself. I couldn't rely on anybody to be there for me, which maybe sounds a little sad, but it also means that I'm super self-reliant. So I have to thank them for that. And also, they're great parents. They have great love. They give me great experiences. They're incredible role models. So it's like, why am I focusing on something that was between the two of them and making it about me? So I used to say to my wife and everybody around me, it's not all about you. And so that's what I was doing. So for me, it helped the process. I hope it didn't make my parents traumatized, and I put them on film and on screen, and I didn't really ask their permission either. But it helped me move on more than anything. So I think it's worth doing, honestly.
It's worth doing, yeah.
Because if you don't, it's always going to be that thing you haven't done.
Yeah,
it's like me not talking about my heroin overdose, or me not even going on the ayahuasca ceremony because I'm thinking that's going to be really hard and I'm probably going to hear something I don't want to hear right now and I better focus on my career. Well, but maybe that's the last thing you should be doing.
Yeah.
Maybe you should listen to yourself. That being said, the real work comes when you get back to the real world and try to put it into practice. I know people that have had 50 ayahuasca ceremonies. It's like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Again, but I shouldn't. I'm not one to judge about what anyone chooses to put in your own body. That's a sovereignty that you have the right. But I'm just saying, it's one thing to get the message. It's another thing to do something about it. We all live in the real world. Here's the news, and I'll tell this to all the psychonauts out there. And again, I've done episodes about psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca. It's all out there. So I feel you. I got love for the community, but you have to live in the real world. So if you don't take that back and meditate on it and make changes in your life and face all your own BS, then you're going to go back to the same cycle. And going back to the medicine isn't always the right thing to do. Terence McKenna said, when you pick up the phone and get the message, hang up the phone, is what he said. So you can take with that as you want. That being said, I'm coming up on 4 years since I had a ceremony, and I know I need to go back at some point. And it's terrifying. Because when you walk in there, it's going to be a hard night. But it's 3 hours. You'll be back in 3 hours. You're not going to die. There's very little chance of dying. You're just going to get a lot of hard truths. It's going to feel like you maybe died about 1,000 times when I do it. And it's going to be very uncomfortable. But at the end, you're okay.
You're okay, yeah.
So for me, it's an amazing tool. Again, investigate it yourself. I first heard Joe Rogan talk about ayahuasca, and 18 months later, I'd done my first ceremony. So I processed it, I learned about it. It's not for everybody. I never encourage anybody to do it, but if you're curious, go down that road. For me, it's an incredible tool. And again, just for clarity, I went down for that ceremony after IronMind. And during IronMind, I spoke with John Joseph, who had been sober for many years. He used to smoke crack and all this crazy stuff. And I had been sober at that point for 6 months. And he said, don't do that, you'll fall off the wagon, all that stuff. But I was like, no, I don't believe that. So for me, I was able to go there and it was worth doing, and it didn't cause me to go back to my addictive behavior. But that was me. And for me, it was really worth the risk. That's my experience with psychedelics.
And the documentary ReConnect is really worth the watch.
Thank you.
Transitioning to 2020, talking about reality, about global news. 2020 was a very difficult year for many of us. Freedom of speech. We have a really interesting clip. Shall we check it out?
Yeah.
All right.
Quick update from London Real World headquarters. I'm here looking at our website traffic here, and it's just absolutely gone through the fucking roof. Breaking through on 8,000 viewers here, 8,000 concurrents on our website, which is something we've never seen before. The last Icke episode didn't break 2,000, so this is 4 times the traffic. There it goes into 8,045 right now. 8,100. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on. Our video was banned from YouTube. So what we've done is taken a copy of the actual broadcast inside studio and we put it on Vimeo, which is on our website. So if you go to londonreal.tv/Icke, ICKE, you'll go there and you can watch it now. I mean, I don't want to, it's 8,300 now on our website. Well, we think this is going to break at 10,000? Yeah. 8,500. This is ridiculous. I mean, this is crazy. This is what's going on here right now. So we're trying to upgrade the server. We think it's going to break again at 10,000. We had to throw people off the site to get them back on here. I mean, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this. Yeah, but the world is telling us something. Like, they really want to hear this stuff. Like, this is completely out of our control at this point. So look, we're on it's working. londonreal.tv/Icke. If you get there, I hope the website will hold. We're putting everything behind it. We're trying to upgrade the server in the background. I don't think anyone can fuck with this video at this point. Actually, trying to get it back up on YouTube as well. We're also trying to get something on YouTube so people can at least watch a little bit, so everybody around the world can find it. Because if you don't know it's here, how are you going to be able to find it? How's it going to be searchable and all that stuff? So we're doing everything we can to get it up there. Really appreciate everybody coming here to find this message. Again, like, these numbers are just absolutely ridiculous. 8,750 now on the website. Almost 8,800 now on the website. I mean, again, this is, Jesus, about to hit 8,900. We've never seen anything like this. So again, the video's back. You can watch it. I would say watch it as soon as possible, just as something happens and it gets taken down, or we get taken down, or we get shut down. I don't know what's going to happen. But watch this video. David Icke was in an incredible form tonight. He just blew everyone away who was watching it. He just said he had never felt the energy that he felt in the room, and he was just on point, just delivering, honestly, like channeling something is what he was doing today. So it was absolutely epic. And again, I think this message is super important. Yes, in Britain, Ofcom would ban this message. They wouldn't allow it to happen on a public broadcasting station, but that's not what we are. 9,000. We just broke 9,000 people on this website. So again, this just keeps going up and up. But we said it here, and the message that needs to get out, again, like we talk about things in a super responsible manner, and it's lessons that everyone needs to understand about fear, about what's happening, about acquiescing to losing our civil liberties and our right to privacy, and trying to understand what's going on. David went really deep here about, is there a virus? The COVID-19 test. Is it a test that tests for things that are killing people, or are people dying anyways and their deaths are being reclassified as COVID-19 related? Then he went into 5G. And the whole thing about 5G and technology and why towers are going up right now doesn't seem like essential work to me. Then he went into vaccines, then he went into nanotechnology, then he went into AI, and he wrapped it all up into the whole economic piece. And it went really deep and it went really heavy. And I guess people are responding and watching this stuff right now. So again, we're going to keep this up as long as our website can hold. Right now we're at 9,200 people right now. And these are concurrent viewers right now on the website. The stream today was the biggest we've ever seen, second most popular YouTube stream in the world today at 64,000. And again, we think our website will hold till 10,000, which right now it's going to break probably in the next 10 minutes. So we'll keep trying to keep this thing up there. LondonReal.tv/Icke. Whatever you can do, just share this, get people to watch it now in case it disappears for some reason forever. I never would have thought this would have happened today. I never would have thought YouTube would have banned our video. Never had a problem with YouTube. And again, like, why? It doesn't break any guidelines what he was talking about today. I've got tons of clips of David Icke from 4 episodes about everything, including 5G, that have never been banned from YouTube. So why? Why today? Okay, sure, he called out a lot of people. Some of them work for Google and YouTube, but it was just in a way where it was exercising his freedom of speech and his freedom of press. So let's talk about 2020. All right, as if our life wasn't already exciting up into 2019. We move into 2020. And I remember I was in New York City in January of that year. We had premiered ReConnect to a New York City audience. I had interviewed about 17 guests there, strangely enough, right by Chinatown. And there were rumors of some virus floating around, but nobody was really taking it seriously. We came back to London, and around March, it all started getting interesting. And there started to be a ton of fear, and people were asking a lot of questions. And so here we are, London Real. My job is to have conversations with people and talk about things. And so what I decided to do was ask someone that I thought would have a unique perspective on this. And so I reached out to David Icke. Just by saying his name, this video might be taken down at this point. And I reached out to David and said, David, I want your thoughts. Now, David had been on the show years before. Strangely enough, Dorian Yates had told me to look at David 7 or 8 years ago. And I looked at him and said, why would I have this crazy guy on the show? He talks about lizard people and all this stuff, like, you must be joking, Dorian. And Dorian said, no, I think you should listen to what he's saying because there's something more here. And so just like Mantak Chia and Dan Pena and Dan Bilzerian, you make a quick judgment on people based on their media footprint. And we all do it. Even I do it, and I'm in this business. I see someone's Instagram profile and I think, oh, they're this, a two-dimensional version of what they are. And so I have to stop from making those judgments and say, guess what, Brian, why don't you put them in the chair and walk a mile in their shoes? And so a few years earlier, I had David on the show, and he sat down, and honestly, I agreed with 95% of what he said. Again, he was all about taking yourself out of what he calls a postage stamp mentality and start to question everything you've been told as a kid. Robert Kiyosaki does the same thing with finance. David does it with other things. He's also got some other strange theories that I don't 100% agree with, but I don't 100% agree with any of my guests on London Real. And so this was a chance for us to be London Real again. And now everybody was watching, and the stakes just went up about 100x. And so we decided to have David on the show in March of 2020. And a lot of people told me not to do it. A lot of people said it was a bad idea, and I had him on the show. Didn't tell anybody he was coming first, and we had an incredible conversation that soon started racing around the globe. I mean, it was being watched 1 million times, 2 million times, 3 million times, being shared in all these countries. I was getting texts from people I had never heard from in 5 or 6 years saying, I just saw that video. And I was thinking, that's a little unique. Usually the world doesn't watch my videos. And so that was a sign. And I thought, okay, we need to have David back on. And a lot of us forget there was a lack of information and there was a lot of fear happening. We were terrified because we didn't know what was going to happen. And nobody was talking to us, and it didn't feel like we were being told the truth. And again, I think humans, they can feel when they're being told the truth, and we just didn't think we were getting the whole picture. And so I decided to invite David on for the second time on April 6th. And this time, I threw a little caution to the wind, and I told people he was coming back, even though I was a little concerned that maybe he wouldn't get here or something wouldn't happen. And again, we forget there was a real lack of information. London was being locked down. It was a scary, scary time. I was on WhatsApp groups where they were talking about millions of people dying, and it was a scary time. I was really like, uh-oh, what are we gonna do? It was also physically hard to get in this office, and we had a physical, very few people here to even do what we were doing. And yet we decided to keep broadcasting. And so on April 6th, I had David Icke here. It's the second time, and we live streamed it. We had over 65,000 concurrent people watching. It was the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, second only to President Donald Trump's coronavirus briefing that day. David and I had an incredible conversation in here. We got like $1,000 of donations, and we don't ask for donations. And people were still, the comments, the money, it was being shared all around the world. I got out of here with David. We had an amazing conversation where he put out all sorts of interesting ideas. Strangely enough, 18 months later, most of them now are being talked about by the President of the United States and asking questions that he was asking at the time that were considered misinformation, false information. Again, it was two people having a conversation in the same chairs I've had for 9 years. We walked outside, we heard the feedback, we thought it was amazing. About 20 minutes later, one of my team members came in and said, the video has been taken down from YouTube. And that's that vlog that you saw. My first reaction was, what are you talking about this? I've been doing this for 9 years. Never have once a single video been taken down. I thought we had something called freedom of speech. And my first reaction was to re-upload the video and to upload a vlog complaining about this. And so this started our battle with YouTube and every other social media platform for freedom of speech, or what I call digital freedom of speech. And I never thought that I would be a freedom fighter when I started this, but something really pissed me off that day. It made me really angry that people couldn't have the option of listening to two people talk. That's it. If you don't want to listen to it, great. If you want to turn it off, great. But how can you not let someone else speak? That really bothered me. And the fact that a massive organization like that could turn it off really got me starting to think about what is freedom of speech. And I had a lot of conversations about that, and we went head to head against YouTube. I also want to remind myself that it was a really scary time because 95% of our revenue is based on YouTube. We had, nearly 2 million subscribers at the time, probably just under. We had hundreds of millions of views, and turning that off would turn off our entire business, our entire footprint. All of my life was on YouTube, and they were going to delete it forever. All my vlogs, all of my videos, all of my interviews, gone. Literally erased, like blackballed, like they used to do back in Venice in the day. That you didn't even exist. And something felt fundamentally wrong about that. So we fought back, and it got really ugly. It was really scary. And yet I kept posting videos, challenging that, talking about that, vlogging about that. Had conversations with YouTube. They started giving us content strikes, threatening to take our channel down, saying that we were publishing misinformation. And again, there was such conflicting information then that one person, the governor of New York, would say, don't wear masks. The WHO would say, wear masks. And then YouTube would say, one's right. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? So it was a really confusing time, and it was hard. And we just came to work every day and kept fighting and kept fighting. And so when I realized we wouldn't be allowed to live stream another episode and talk about this stuff, we decided to create our own platform and live stream it ourselves. And so that's what happened on May 6th. We live streamed what we called Rose Icke 3. We created our own digital freedom platform. We hired an independent live streaming service that had done the Super Bowl the year before. And again, there's so many stories that I'm going to make into a movie about what happened behind the scenes. It was massively stressful. These companies were pulling out on us in the last minute. PayPal shut us down. Dropbox shut us down, which means they watch my videos, which doesn't make sense. Facebook shut us down. Instagram shut us down. LinkedIn deleted my account. All this is happening in the background. I thought my bank accounts were going to be shut down. I thought the police were going to show up in our offices. I just didn't know what was going to happen. You know, it was a really scary time. And all we could do was just keep fighting. And I have to thank the team here, my chief of staff, Paul Frost, everybody that was involved, Kim, Julian, everybody that just came to work and kept broadcasting. And we turned up the notch. We actually started broadcasting 3 times a week on the Digital Freedom Platform. And that day, May 6th, was massive. If you remember, there was no sporting events. There was nothing going on. And so we pulled off the biggest live stream of a human conversation in history on that day. 1.2 million people watched live, me and David speak in this studio, and it was off the charts, and the energy was so intense. And at the end of the episode, David said this. He said, Brian, I want everyone out there to not listen to me. Make your own decision. And whatever you do, make your choices out of love. That's what David says. And again, I've never met a government, a cult leader, or anyone who ever says, make a decision out of love and make your own decision.
Yeah.
And like, this is the thing people don't get about David. They take some crazy things he said in the past and they try to character assassinate him and make everything else he says to seem irrelevant, as opposed to looking at everything that he says. And again, I don't agree with everything David says. I actually don't believe in conspiracies. I don't believe in a cabal. But I do believe that he brought up some really interesting points. And the man has the right to speak. And you have the right to listen if you choose. And no government, and I especially don't think a digital platform has the right to do that. And again, I think these platforms, they're actually, they served as public forms of communication. And so I don't even buy the thing that they're a business and they can choose what they want. And so that's the way we felt. We pulled off the broadcast. It was a really big deal. And we just kept going. We did 57 other episodes on the Digital Freedom Platform. I had Nobel Prize winners. I had Noam Chomsky of MIT. I had lots of people questioning the science, everything that was going on. And we streamed 57 episodes that are now still on the Digital Freedom Platform. They're not on YouTube. They're not on our website because YouTube would delete our channel if they were on our website. Everything on YouTube right now is all censored content. I can't put up real stuff on there. And no one knows that. And we were this close from being banned by YouTube many times. And it was a constant threat over us. And I just want to say this is what these companies do. And again, I'm not judging why and how they do this. I'm just saying this is what they do. They force you to self-censor by threatening your social media footprint. And this is happening all the time. And it happens in the crypto space, as we know. And again, I'm telling you stories that crypto people have told before. Yeah. My bank accounts was shut down because I talked about crypto. I can't talk about crypto. Pomp's show was taken down off the air. I reached out to him about a week ago and said, can I help? Because they deleted his whole channel for talking about crypto. So I used to think these people were crazy until it happens to you. And that's what happened to me in 2020. And so we decided to fight back. And I couldn't be more proud of what we've done. As Conor McGregor would say, I want to apologize for absolutely nothing for what we did in 2020. I'm proud of everything we did. And it's all on the Digital Freedom Platform. And again, the numbers were off the charts. We did more episodes. And hopefully someday we'll get those episodes onto YouTube. And we'll make a movie and tell this story. Because it was a big moment for us. And we were really proud of how we fought back. So I think we have a clip here that kind of shows what we ended up doing with David. I had him on May 6th, and then we had him back on 2 more times that year to just keep talking about these ideas. Every time, again, massive amounts of people tuned in. And, you know, based on the numbers alone from the first broadcast with David, and correlating those to the second broadcast with David, if YouTube had allowed that episode to stay up, it would have been the most watched video podcast in history. It would have broken 20 million views, which would have beat Joe Rogan, Elon Musk smoking weed, which I think is right up there. So again, as I told YouTube, clearly people want to watch this. So why are you stopping them? Yeah. So again, I get there's a debate, and I love a healthy debate, but that's what we did. let me play this video of some of the Icke stuff, and then we'll finish off the year.
Awesome, man. Look forward to it.
Just reflecting on this crazy 2 months that we've had here at London Real, and we've had with you as a member of the London Real Army. You know, literally just 2 months ago on April 6th, we had a normal day at London Real. We were just doing what we've been doing for 9 years. I had a person in the leather chair. We were going deep into their brain in an unscripted, unedited, uncensored way. And 30 minutes after we finished the interview, this entire adventure began. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is David Icke, the English writer. When someone decided that it wasn't okay for other people to listen to those ideas.
Once we open our eyes, we open our minds, we open our hearts. The walls of the prison, the walls of the bubble, the walls of the box, whatever you want to talk about, just fade away.
And so that's a little bit of the taste of the content that we just kept broadcasting. Like I said, 57 more episodes, digital freedom platform. We had tons of support, 38,000 people that donated to make that thing happen. It's something that Alex Jones told me to do. He said, Brian, ask for help and get a community to help you do this. And it was the first time I'd ever asked for help in like 9 years of London Real. And it ended up creating the London Real Army. And it was just an amazing group of people that helped watch this content and share it. Actually reminds me a lot of blockchain and what you guys are doing and we're doing today. It was a first look into that. And again, if I had been involved in the DeFi and the blockchain space, and we'll talk about this, there could have been even other options of how to get that out. But again, we did all of this and created all of this when everything was shut down. There's no crowdfunding platform that would have allowed us to do it, and nobody was even in the office. So like we did all of this on a skeleton team in real time. Like I said, we were broadcasting 3 times a week during that pandemic. I was training in the stairwells because the gyms were shut down. I was coming to work every day with a letter in my pocket saying I was part of the media and I had a right to come to work. I mean, it was tense. It was a very hectic year. And again, we were super proud that we just stood up and just fought for freedom of speech. I wrote an open letter asking for the legislation of digital freedom of speech that's been signed now 256,000 times on our website. And maybe it was the time where I started thinking, you know, maybe the political space is a better place to attack this problem, because you're going to need governments to go up against some of these platforms. I also realized for the first time ever that we're in an information war. And that's what we're in right now. We're also in a monetary war that we'll talk about. But last year, I saw we're in an information war. And whoever controls the information wins. And again, that could be any government around the world on your laptop, in Facebook, in the privacy of your own home, and you think it's someone else. But it's an information war. And that's what we're fighting for. And so the stakes are very high. It's hard to understand why people act the way they do. All you can do is go down to the fundamentals and say, what's important? I still believe freedom of speech is important and the right to hear someone speak. So that's what we did. I got invited on Fox News with Judge Jeanine to tell my story. And I wanted to play a quick video clip because it kind of tells everybody kind of what happened and finishes up the story of 2020. Again, it feels like 10 years ago. It was such an incredible time. But here's me talking to Judge Jeanine about fighting for freedom of speech.
It's the 4th of July, but we're still fighting for freedom of speech. Here to discuss that and more from across the pond is the founder of London Real and the host of the London Real podcast, Brian Rose. Brian, thanks so much for being with us tonight. I just want to tell our viewers a little bit about you. You were raised in California. You were on Wall Street. You were a banker, very successful. But at some point, you decided that when you were working in London, you kind of gave it all up and decided that you wanted to create a podcast, and you started with rather simple tools. And on April 6th of this year, you had the largest viewed broadcast on YouTube, second only to a broadcast of President Trump. What happened after that broadcast, Brian?
Well, Judge, since founding London Real almost 10 years ago, I've gone from podcasting in my kitchen to becoming one of the most popular independent media platforms in the world. But for the past 3 months, I've been locked in a battle for our most basic fundamental human right, freedom of speech, or in this case, what I call digital freedom of speech. And like you said, on April 6th, we simply broadcast a conversation between two people, which was the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, second only to President Trump. And instead, the entire 2.5-hour conversation was banned and deleted from YouTube 30 minutes later. Now, look, I live in London, but I grew up in America, so freedom of speech is in my DNA. Now, Judge, I might not agree with everything you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So we decided to fight back and keep broadcasting these quote-unquote banned conversations, and we created the Digital Freedom Platform, a censorship-free, independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, for the people. We raised over $1 million from 31,000 digital patriots from around the world during the greatest recession in the last 100 years, and then we broadcast the largest live stream of a conversation in human history to over 1.3 million unique viewers, and we showed these Silicon Valley technology censors that we will not be silenced, we will not be censored, and we will not be stopped.
Okay, Brian, so what were you discussing in that YouTube platform that was taken down? What was the discussion about?
Well, that's a great question, because I had a one-on-one private conversation 24 hours later with my reps at YouTube, and they said we violated quote-unquote community standards, and I couldn't get them to go much further than that, and that's the problem. It's subjective to what they choose. Now, we spoke about COVID-19 and some of the lockdown issues, but the problem is that they don't have to give you any details. They call themselves a private company, and they go ahead and censor. And they're censoring all sorts of things these days, including talk about what's going on with the CDC, the WHO, and potential vaccines. And I'm on the front lines feeling this for the first time in 9 years. Now I'm being censored, and it really goes against the Constitution. And there's something really wrong when we can't have a free discussion in a debate.
Who are they? Who are you talking about?
You know, it's a great question. Right now, there are literally a handful of people at these trillion-dollar Silicon Valley companies that are controlling what we have to say. And we've seen this recently, you know, with President Trump fighting for his own digital freedom of speech on Twitter. And are you telling me that Jack Dorsey should have more power than the President of the United States? I think not. You know, now we have these unelected, unaccountable, unknown, quote-unquote, fact checkers dictating what we all can say online. You know, but the real question is why, and why now? I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening in an election year, and I think we should really wonder what's happening here. I just say, Judge, follow the money, follow the money. But one thing I know is that YouTube's policy of censorship is costing lives.
Okay, so in 30 seconds, you have a proposal to protect freedom of speech on the digital platform, which is kind of interesting because during these shutdowns, a lot of us are not talking to each other in public, but we're talking online. So they pretty much are monitoring everything we're saying and doing. Isn't that interesting?
It is. It's very convenient. And now that we're locked down, we have to use these technology platforms that then again say they're private companies and they don't have to follow freedom of speech. But we've looked into it. And when a private company acts as a public utility, there's precedent here in London with the London Stock Exchange, then those companies have to follow the law of the land. And so we are taking action legally in the UK and the US. The beauty is if we can prove this in the UK, they have to change their policy globally. But you're right, Judge. They're actually forcing us to use these platforms so we can't have normal conversations with each other, and then they're censoring what we have to say. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you know, this all points in one direction, and they're controlling our conversations, they're controlling our thoughts, and there's just other agendas here that we're just not in control of.
All right, Brian Rose, it's great to have you on. We're going to bring you back to justice. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll be right back.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. So being live on Fox News was pretty intense. That was actually, I think, the July 4th weekend special. And here I am in a three-piece suit talking about freedom of speech. So it was really special. Just want to thank Judge Jeanine for just doing that and putting me out there. And again, I think that pretty much summarizes everything we went through in 2020. It was madness. It was crazy. It pushed me harder than I ever thought possible. Everybody was questioning our decisions, people trying to shut us down.
And we just stayed focused with the team, and we just powered through it. It was actually an incredible year for us, whereas it was a very hard year for other people, but we just stuck to what we did and just stayed focused. So yeah, again, amazing year, super proud of everything we did. And I think history will judge us, and I think 10 years from now, people will look back and look at this as a really important moment, what London Real did. So yeah, super proud of 2020. It feels like 10 years ago.
Super inspiring year. And can I kind of transition towards what you just mentioned, your three-piece suits?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear the story behind that.
Yeah, I've got an incredible tailor. I think we'll play a clip and I'll tell you a little bit about the suits. So here you go.
1963, Sean Connery was the first actor to play 007 on the big screen. Early on, James Bond was very clear, hey, I get my stuff made on Salville Row.
So I'm obviously wearing three-piece suits. Some people say I dress like Dan Pena. I don't know what that means. But yeah, I think when I went to the castle in Scotland, I started having to wear a suit for the first time. And I started, I don't know, somehow realizing that it's important what you wear. Now, a lot of people say, Brian, you're not keeping it real like you used to in the days where you wore skateboard t-shirts and G-Star Raw, you know, trousers. And I guess I would say this, when I put the suit on every day, it forces me to become a leader. And it shows everybody in the world, including my team. And again, everyone's watching all the time, that I am ready to go, I'm prepared, and I'm willing to become this person every day. And so the suit isn't just a suit. I know Guy Ritchie was having this conversation with Joe Rogan, and he wore a suit and tie to his show. Guy Ritchie, you know, the director of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch and all that, great British director. And Joe said, why are you wearing a suit? He said, it's uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. And Guy Ritchie said, no. He said, they took the suit away from us and they forced us to wear it again. He said, I own this suit. The suit is me, and this is an expression of who I am. And Conor McGregor wears suits as well. And so I was introduced to John Kent, who is, in my opinion, the best tailor in the world. He's a Savile Row tailor who has tailored Bing Crosby, Sean Connery, the late Prince Philip. Like, he's tailored everyone. And he's an East End geezer who's like in his 80s, who is just a gent. And he makes all my suits for me. And for me, it's also an incredible way to connect with English culture and the history. And I feel like I'm representing London. And honestly, when I put on a John Kent suit in the morning, I just feel like $1 million. It feels like a suit of armor. And again, I'm always trying to improve. And so my suit game has gone up a lot, even in the last year and a half. And John is my man. He's also Dan Pena's tailor. He introduced me to John Kent, and I've had John on the show London Real as well, because he's an incredible part of British history. And also, it really pisses off Dan Pena that I use his tailor and I've had him on the show. So there's an extra bonus there as well. I would just say to anybody, as Dan Pena told me, there's two ways you can make a first impression: what you wear and what you say. And it does make a difference. And to all of the, you know, the kids out there these days, I'm starting to talk like Dan as well, who you know, do an interview on Zoom in your t-shirt and you come to work casual and all that stuff, that's all well and good. But, you know, there's also something to presenting yourself. And now I've become synonymous with the suit. And so when people want to do media appearances, they usually say, is Brian there? And is the suit going to be there as well? But for me, it's a way to just, like I said, own myself every day, to show everybody I'm ready for work, and to kind of honor British culture. And yeah, and it's just become a thing. So Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. There's a beautiful quote that says, "You never get a second chance to make a first impression."
Yeah.
And I believe the way you look, like you said, it inspires confidence, shows that you love the local culture, which kind of is the perfect segue to your life in 2021, which is Mayor of London, right? Yeah. Should we watch a video?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool.
So who am I? Well, I'm a proud Brit with an American accent. I've lived in this city for 21 years. I've been a British citizen for 14 years, and this city has given me everything. It gave me my life back. It gave me my business. It gave me my family. It gave me my purpose. Today is a very important day because I think we face, as this city, really a crossroads. We can go one of two directions. We can go a direction into the future where we have the most incredible city in the world. And this is the least I can do to give something back for everything that's been given to me. So yeah, then I decided to become mayor of London, right? I mean, now that I look back at these 10 years, it just all sounds crazy, doesn't it? It all seems like a movie. And so, you know, the truth is, in 2020, I was complaining about public policy, governments. I was complaining about being restricted in freedom of speech. And at one point I thought, you know what? Your sons, Caden and Damon, are gonna look back in 20 years and they're gonna say, what did daddy do in like one of the most trying times in human history? Did he make another video or did he actually do something about it? That was the question I asked myself. And I looked at the current mayor of London and I said, you must be joking. I looked at all the businesses that were struggling. I was taking taxis home at night and the cabbies were saying, I can barely handle my mental health, let alone make my payment. I was getting all the business owners and friends I know saying, we're dying here and no one's talking about this thing happening. And I thought, you know what, we need to try to do better. So I spoke with my team and we said, let's go for it. You know, we really think we can create a change. We see the vision. And I decided to run for mayor of London. And so we went for it and we went all in. We started campaigning 6 months before anybody else did. You know, I mean, this is something that's usually done in 6 weeks before the election in May. We started like in August and September. Actually, started preparing. I think I announced in October. So we had 7 months to campaign to be mayor of London. I'd never run for political office. I'd never wanted to run, but I saw this city I love, 9 million people in here who were being just devastated every day by like a total lack of vision, a total lack of leadership. And I thought, we can make a difference. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. It's the most expensive thing I've ever done. And luckily I had incredible people here with experience that just backed me up and backed me 100%, including my family, my wife, my daughter, who honestly had to bear the harder part of it, because when you run for political office, everybody comes after you. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what happened to us. But we went all in on this. We went to win. We didn't win because this was fun. We didn't win to just, you know, get on a debate. We went to win. So we created resources. I created a 50-page manifesto with all the policies of London to get business back in work, to help transport, to help crime, to help housing, the issues that London cares about. I met with members of the House of Lords, members of the Metropolitan Police, architects, top architects in London, community groups. I went out and spoke with the knife control people in Croydon. I mean, we were out on the streets creating solutions. And we have amazing policies that honestly will stand up for the next 10 years. I had a solution to get corporate money from Amazon and Citibank into our community centers. But right now, they don't get anything from the government, and these kids have nothing better to do. And then they complain when there's knife crime. I had ways to solve our transport problem, which is an absolute mess. The tube is so antiquated, and yet it could be run at a profit. I had solutions for housing. Like the amount of new houses built, affordable homes in the past 5 years, it's a joke. It's like thousands when more like 50, 100,000 have been promised. I actually had business solutions for all of this. And yet when you look at politics, it's just this terrible game of nothing changing. And I do actually hope that the blockchain will help us in the future. And so we went all in. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I had no idea that the media would come after us with a vengeance. And I realized this, Alex, there are gatekeepers out there that I bypassed with YouTube. I didn't have to go to the television channels to broadcast London Real. But when you go into politics, first of all, you have two brands out there. In the UK, it's called Labour and Conservative. In America, it's called Democrat and Republican. And they are brands, just like Coca-Cola. And they are big business. And they do not want to be messed with because they control probably more wealth than Coca-Cola or Amazon or Google. And so they have an inherent need to fight back. Also, the media companies are all part of that ecosystem as well. And they get stories from these people, and they, whether they know it or not, are probably anti any independent candidate. Also, the BBC, right? Our broadcaster. Strangely enough, even though I was the second favorite in every betting odds maker for at least 4 months, I didn't get invited to the debates. And this is our national broadcasting company, where clearly I'm the second favorite, and yet I didn't get invited out of 4 or 6 candidates. So it was all very strange. Also, I couldn't campaign because we were potentially locked down, so we had to come up with creative solutions. We created a battle bus that I drove around London. We went 5,700 miles inside of London. I went to every single one of the 32 boroughs in London twice. As much as I could, I got out in the streets and talked to people, but when we couldn't, we broadcast from the back of the bus and we live streamed. I live streamed for 2 hours every couple of days and answered live questions. Where our current mayor of London, there was one point where people from the public tried to ask him questions. He locked himself in a coffee shop for an hour, and then he ran to his Range Rover and refused to talk to them. I actually went out into the streets and talked to everybody I could. So it was enlightening for me. The press came after me. I was the heroin-taking, urine-drinking, breakdancing American who wants to take over your country. This was the narrative. And we were on the front page of the Times. We had a 2-page print spread in the Times of magazine, the Evening Standard. We had more media, I think we were the top 4 candidate when it came to media compared with all the others. We served up, I think, 2 billion impressions of our advertisements to people in London with all of my policy videos. We went all in. And everybody came after us and tried to attack anything that they could to try to discredit us. So I know how a lot of people feel now. And honestly, I got to ignore it, but my family had to watch and read all of that stuff. And that was hard because they have to read all these things and say, do you hear what this person's saying about you? Why don't you say something? And then you learn quickly in media that if you reply, then you increase the narrative and it expands. And so sometimes you have to choose your battles and try to focus on your policies and your opinions. And so, man, it was really intense. Let me just say that. It was really intense.
I would love to ask you, would you be willing to run again in the future? And if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? Obviously, you probably learned many lessons connecting with the communities. There must have been so many meaningful experiences. But yeah, I would love to know those things.
You know, Alex, the biggest lesson I learned was this. At some point in the future, a candidate will be able to go directly to a voter and convey a message, and they'll be able to vote for the candidate.
Yeah.
It sounds obvious. Just like as a YouTube creator, I can create a video and serve it up to a person. I don't have to go through a television company or a movie studio or whatever. And we're seeing a lot of this in blockchain. And so at some point in the future, this will happen. And we thought this time was now, where I could bypass the 2-party system. I could bypass the mainstream media. I could bypass the BBC and go directly to the voter. And if they could really look at my policies were 10 times better than any of the other ones, because all the other ones were stuck in the same system. They're all basically all the same candidate with a different name and a different party. We see this in America sometimes too. And so there's no real change. It's business as usual, and everything kind of stays the same. You don't know why anything's not improving. It's not run like a business or a company. As an entrepreneur, you would never survive in politics. And so what did I learn? I learned that that hasn't happened yet. I've learned that politics is a dirty business. I've learned that most people don't pay attention to politics, except for maybe once every 4 years when they actually have to decide and elect. Will I run for office again? I don't know. I think what we're doing right now with DeFi and with the blockchain and the crypto asset community can probably change more lives than I could as the mayor of London. Even Londoners. I think I can empower more Londoners even in the next 6 to 12 months with what we're doing now than I could maybe in that office. So we'll see. The next election is 2024. By then, I think people will be finally sick of the current mayor. And I think they'll be willing to open up their eyes to some other things. But we'll see. The truth is I can probably still do incredible work here with the communities and with empowering people, with London Real, with the blockchain work, with even the stuff we're doing with some of the communities.
Well, you definitely got my vote. And if we can transition to actually, you have really good footage showing some of the pain points and the struggles. Should we check it out?
Yeah, let's play it.
All right.
Hi, sir, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have a quick chat with you?
Yeah, definitely.
Our understanding is that right now campaigning is allowed under the...
I'm afraid not, sir. I'm afraid it is completely What you're doing on the campaigning doesn't fall within the essence of the lockdown.
It seems a little very frustrating. Very frustrating. I think watching us, starting us, following us. It seems a little political that you're following us, not the mayor, the Lib Dems, and also happening.
I mean, there are limits.
I just want to say that.
Let's not turn this into political, because it's not. But that's the way it seems to be going, isn't it? Let's get the ticket. Let's get the ticket issued.
All of the other political parties are campaigning actively right now, doing it in a much more dangerous way, where they're going to people's doors and handing leaflets.
I'm not aware of that activity that's been occurring.
Go on their social media feeds. Go on the BBC website where they have pictures of these things. It seems a terrible unfairness.
Does that make sense?
Okay, let's do that.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
So I'm stopping the campaigning right now. I've been told that we cannot be out here on the streets doing this, even though we have permits to film. We have approval by the council. We're not committing any crimes, in my opinion, but we have now been told that we cannot. I've been given a fine for violating this, and we will be stopping to do this as of right now. So that's what happened. We will obviously contest this in courts. We don't think this is fair. I think this is political. Other campaigns are out there right now campaigning as we speak on the ground. But I believe we were targeted, and now we've been given tickets. And so we will, of course, stop. And that's the plan at this point, and we will keep you posted. So what you just watched was one of the strangest times of the mayoral campaign. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I think it was in January. We were on my battle bus. We were at London Bridge near the station. And strangely enough, my family was on board the bus as well, my two boys. And we were out there campaigning. And I got outside the bus and I was walking down the middle of the street filming a video with my phone with an umbrella. And suddenly we were surrounded by 5 police vans, about 10 police officers, and they stopped me and they said, "We are banning you from campaigning." And I had a similar moment to April 6th with David Icke. I said, "What are you talking about? You're banning me from campaigning? Like, what does that mean? Like, I can't talk about the best political ideas for this city?" They said, "Yeah, you cannot campaign. You're violating COVID restrictions." And I said, "I'm alone in the middle of the street." I said, "Everything in my bus is following the exact same restrictions right now that Apple TV is using to film a series right now on the mall next to Buckingham Palace. We had all the same protocols and everyone was distanced and wearing masks." And I said, "So we're actually not." And I said, "Who sent you here? Is this political?" And they got very angry and they wrote us tickets and they made us go home that day. And it was a big moment and it was our chance to like step up and fight. And so we said, we want free and fair elections. At one point, I thought about calling up the UN and getting them in here with their helmets, just like they do in third world countries, to make sure we had fair elections, because this was just strange, you know. And again, I respect the police a lot. I had amazing conversations with the Metropolitan Police. I support Ken Marsh, who runs one of the police unions. I went and boxed at his clubs. And I believe in the police. I believe in funding the police. I believe in backing the police. But that felt political because they had followed us and found us that day and tried to stop us and intimidate us. And that wasn't okay. So we got back on the bus the next day. And again, we were followed. We were pulled over at one point, but we just kept campaigning. So again, it was just another chance for us to like stand up and fight for basic freedoms. And so we kept doing that. all the way up until May 6th, where we were just campaigning our heads off. It was the craziest time here at London Real, and we've had some crazy times. It was so intense. My team worked really hard, and I want to give them all the credit for just backing me and pushing me. Chief of Staff Paul Frost, Kim, Julian, everybody involved. We created our own political party, the London Real Party. We just did the most incredible innovation, something no political candidate has ever done. We had the largest outdoor advertising campaign in British political history. Again, the battle bus, the nearly 6,000 miles, the 2 billion impressions. It was intense. It was costly. It made me ask really hard questions about why I was doing this, because this was really hard to show up every day and get slammed, to get criticized, to bring pain to my family. And it was really expensive. And so I had to ask Brian, why are you doing this? And every day I'd be like, I'm doing this for these 9 million people in this city that are suffering. And it was a great moment to ask me, how bad do you want this and why are you doing this? Because if I was doing this for me, I would have quit in the first month. Trust me. Because if I would have become mayor, I would have taken a massive pay cut, right? I would have gotten more criticism. It would have been the worst and hardest job ever. And so again, I would just say it was a real moment to ask me like what was important. And I really felt like I was doing it for the people of London. And I was at a meetup after the conference I met you on Saturday night with the Celsius people, and a bunch of people came up that voted for me. And they said, Brian, we could really feel your passion for this city, and we could really feel that you really cared about this city. And man, I love this city so much. And it really bothered me to see what was happening. And when you go out there and see these, like the knife crime, and you see these kids, and you see these community centers, and you see this housing, and you see these broken promises, and you see these businesses that were broken when they could have actually survived. And then you look at politicians and you look at a lack of accountability, man, it really wound me up. So we did all that. The elections were May 6th. I went to City Hall on May 8th. They stuck all the candidates in one room for 4 hours while we waited for the vote. It was one of the most uncomfortable experiences and comical. There were 2 YouTubers there, and they had their cameras as well. One of them gave me a bottle of fake piss and filmed it. Like, it was crazy, right? We had all been talking smack about each other. We were all in the same room. It was actually kind of a fun moment because we were all like, you know what? We're finally done, and you have to respect all of us because we went through this crazy journey. So I was there with Lauren Fox and Sean Bailey and the YouTubers, and the current mayor didn't show up till the last minute, and then he accepted, and then he won. So that was May 8th on the Saturday. On the Monday, I came back to London Real, and I thought, what's next? And if I'm honest with you, Alex, I had been eyeing the DeFi markets for a couple months, and I had been watching what you guys had been up to. And I thought to myself, there's something powerful here. And so my next reaction was to investigate this space. And again, I've been getting the messages here on London Real for almost a decade. You know, Max Keiser was here in 2013 talking about Bitcoin. Andreas Antonopoulos was here in 2015, 2017, 2019, talking about the internet of money, the future of money, before we really saw it happening, before we really saw smart contracts and Ethereum or DeFi. Tika Tuari was here telling us all about these potential coins. And I know Tika, and I bought the coins, but I still didn't listen, you know, I didn't get it. And then I got it. And I looked at the numbers, the amount locked, the DeFi summer of 2020. I looked at my own history on Wall Street, and the innovation was stuff like I was doing in the 1990s, except now you had it decentralized. And I saw a way to finally break the stranglehold the banks have on people, not only on their money, but their mentality. And I thought, I'm all in. So I took the team. We didn't even have a break. And again, I got to shout out my team. They're amazing. And we went right in to creating the DeFi Academy. And we started broadcasting the best voices in the DeFi crypto asset and blockchain space and putting them right in the chair. And that's all that my London Real viewers have gotten for the past 6 months. Some of them are saying, Brian, what's going on? When are you going to get back to normal? Some of them are saying, we get it and we're in. Some are joining. But I'm on this mission now. And that's how I met you. And I love this DeFi space. And we get a ton of love from this community because I think they saw us fighting for freedom of speech and free elections. And they voted for us for mayor. And they see what we're doing. And the space that you're in is just the most incredible community ever. You know, it's people that really want to make a difference. And people that see a better version of humanity. So yeah, I couldn't be more excited.
And it makes so much sense. You know, when I look back at your life, Brian, working at Wall Street in that dog-eat-dog world, extremely exclusive, not inclusive at all. The rich stay rich, the poor stay poor. The gap stays there as well. And then you had the issue with YouTube where there's a lack of censorship resistance, which is one of the main problems that the blockchain solves. And then you had all these people around you, like just, literally whispering Bitcoin, crypto, DeFi. And then on top of that, you go and you realize that the police is being political, where you would like something neutral, which again is related to the blockchain. And then you connect with the community across London, where you feel their pain, you feel their stories, and you feel like, I want to serve the community, hopefully not just in London, but even across the world. Is it kind of like, because I feel like this interview is really going through your life and your highest highs, your lowest lows, but also your seek for purpose. And is it a combination of these events, just like with London Real, what made you feel this is my new purpose?
It honestly feels, Alex, like my whole life has been preparing for this moment. It sounds weird, but if you look at it, it's uncanny. Like, I haven't really spoken about my Wall Street experience. It's 15 years of my life and my knowledge that I've never really got to talk about. I traded billions of dollars worth of financial instruments. I understood risk management. I saw the banking from the inside. I saw the credit crises. I went through all that. And yet for a while, I'd never used it because I was broadcasting London Real. And every now and then I would have a conversation with like a Jim Rickards or someone or a Kiyosaki, and I could downshift into that gear, but I wasn't really using that. Now it feels like I've been preparing my whole life for this, right? Because again, broadcasting London Real for 10 years, listening to the community, fighting against freedom of speech, fighting for free and fair elections. And then all of my guests have constantly said, Brian, we've got to find a way to connect as a species. We are all one, is what all the guests say at the end. All the OG guests at the end say, we are all one. We have to remember we're all in this together. Even though most of our daily life is me, I gotta fight for mine, I gotta get my business. If we can't think of the bigger picture, we're all gonna lose. And that's what ayahuasca teaches me, that's what London Real Guest teaches me, and this space embodies that. I had a guest on, Jeff Booth, a couple weeks ago who said, Bitcoin can save humanity. And this is a very mild-mannered Canadian guy. And he said, Brian, I really think this blockchain, this public ledger, this system we're building of peer-to-peer interactions that also is transparent and can keep us honest and bring out the best version of ourselves is something we've never had before. And it makes us all, like I said, like transparent. It's like if we were all broadcast every single day our actions, we would probably be a better version. People talk about privacy, and you come to a city and you can maybe not have people see your actions, but on the blockchain, it's all there. I don't know. I'm still processing this, Alex, but I think DeFi and the blockchain and the work you guys are doing and what we're doing with the DeFi Academy will actually ultimately fulfill the mission of London Real, which again, I go back to what's on the wall back there. We try to figure out what we're all about. It's a transformation of humanity into a fully empowered, conscious, and cooperative species. Fully empowered, conscious, cooperative. I don't know, I see the blockchain in all of those things. I really do. And I think it's very conscious as well. You're conscious of who you are, your relationship with money, your sense of value. And again, this community is amazing. And Web 3.0, this concept that we own this future, it's so exciting, and it resonates with my people so much. And the DeFi Academy is so amazing, and everyone's so excited. And again, the community has just really welcomed us in. And I just got to thank you guys for doing the hard work of the last 3 or 4 years because you guys were doing the hard work. You guys were kind of doing what we did maybe with freedom of speech when Bitcoin wasn't at all-time high today, breaking through 67,000. You guys were building infrastructure in the hard times, and so I have to tip my hat off to you guys. I mean, we did a few broadcasts, but we were not the OGs of this space. That goes to some of the other DeFi protocols that I'm a huge fan of. And again, I respect the Bitcoin maximalists. I know Max Keiser. I get it. Okay, cool. But there's a huge place for DeFi. And I think it was Dan Moorhead at Pantera Capital. He compared it to Microsoft in 1998. He said at the time it was a $220 billion market cap company. Amazon was $3.5 billion. Apple was $2 billion. And he said Google and Facebook were zero because they didn't exist. Fast forward 20 some years, Microsoft did 10x, which is great, but the other companies did a 500x. And that's the way he says you look at DeFi. He said these exciting new protocols are going to be the huge movers, while something like Bitcoin is still going to be a great asset play. But they see the real opportunity in the innovation in the DeFi space. And so do I. So it's all we're talking about these days. I love it. It's why you're here. And it's the future.
And you mentioned the currency wars earlier. I mean, just the currency wars, and then you said the information wars. So currency wars is obviously solved by Bitcoin, which is the only borderless money on the planet. Even though the US dollar is used everywhere. Like, let me tell you a story, Brian. My dad is based in Iran, in Tehran. And when there was an embargo, when Trump imposed an embargo on Iran, one thing that people don't understand is you're not just stopping US dollar, you're not just cutting bank accounts, you're just cutting the entire country out of foreign business, right? So my dad lost his job. He had a really good job at an oil company that was exporting, lost his job, lost all of his bank accounts in the US and in Europe because he's an Iranian citizen. And guess what, Brian? The only way that I could send money to my dad, who's 76, getting old and cannot take care of himself anymore, was through Bitcoin.
Wow.
Because I sent that Bitcoin to him and he would bring it to a local exchange. Will they be able to transform the Bitcoin into Tuman and then spend his Tuman to go grocery shopping in Iran? So if people believe that Bitcoin is limited, that's the only borderless money on the planet. I mean, the US dollar is accepted in most countries. But we know last year, right, they printed 20% of total supply in 1 year, and Biden's going to do the same this year. How do you feel about the currency wars? Or are there any other global movements that make you realize that, okay, it's time for DeFi, it's time for Bitcoin? Are there any other?
First of all, that's a powerful story. Honestly, that story says it all, doesn't it? It's like you've got governments doing things and controlling currencies, but real lives are at stake. And I got a couple thoughts on that. But 2020, let me think that we're in an information war. And that's where I realized that whoever controls the information controls everything. And that some actor in China or Russia could be your friend on Facebook that is getting you to do something or think a way that maybe you don't want to or you should. And that it's all about information. Whereas before, we're used to wars being fought with guns and threats and troops. Whereas now it's happening inside your own brain. And everybody has a vested interest in how you think. So that was mind-boggling, and I lived through it. And I was on Alex Jones' show, which is called InfoWars. And again, I'm a big fan of what Alex does just because he goes for it. And so I saw that. And now that I'm in the DeFi space, I now see that actually there's another bigger war, which is the currency wars. Mm-hmm. And to now even speak with some actors in this space that talk about digital yuan versus digital dollar, and who's going to dominate globally and control every country to force them to choose and infect that part of people's life. On top of the information war, now you've got something serious and something you don't even know is happening. And it makes me really sit up and take notice. And your example with your dad is a perfect example. I like to make an example of my mom. My mom is 76 years old. She was a single mother that raised 3 children. She happened to buy a property 30 years ago, and she learned to invest in property. Now, she supports herself by renting out 25 properties that she owns in San Diego, and that's how she makes a living. She had the option of storing her extra money in an asset that would still be around because she lives in San Diego, California. I always think that there's a woman who's 76, who's in Nigeria or Ethiopia, who was a single mother, raised 3 kids, worked hard all of her life. But what were her options to save? A local currency that was devalued or abolished, a business that was seized by the government or taken away by a civil war or whatever. And so at the end of her life, what does she have? Nothing. And these 2 incredible women that lived incredible lives, that did amazing things, one has an option and one doesn't, until now. And as Michael Saylor would say it, Bitcoin is digital property. So now both of these incredible women can be storing value in a way that can't be taken away by a government. It can't be devalued by the massive printing of fiat currencies, which has been done during the pandemic to a mind-boggling amount and is done in every country since the Romans. And if you listen to what Jeff Booth just told me, every 100 years there's a reset, whether it's a war, whether it's a Russian Revolution or a Bastille Day, where even the rich lose. You know, I mean, again, Robert Kiyosaki is right. Rich people make money work for them until, they get their heads chopped off, in France, until there's a revolution, until there's a war and the currency's reset. So actually that human model has continued to fail for 2,000 years. Bitcoin can save that because it's deflationary by nature. And it shows us that actually in Bitcoin, the price of everything in the future is going down, which makes sense. If you look at the phone in our pocket, it makes everything free, right? Your pictures are free, your content's for free. So why are the prices going up? This is a figment of our control, our government. It's the inflationary fiat currencies. And there's only one way this ends. It ends in tears. It ends in a reset.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this to like a few people recently, and they said, but that was the old days. That was World War II. That everything's different now. We'll never have that again. And it's like, really? They've been saying that for a couple thousand years. You know, there will be some type of reset, except now we see a shining light. And we see it in things like Bitcoin and all the other crypto assets and the blockchains that inspire so much hope and is so much transparency. And again, takes the banking sector out of it, the government out of it, and just gives the power right back to the people. It's just like incredibly inspiring. And to hear that you did that with your dad is amazing.
Thank you so much, buddy. And banks will become museums eventually. That's what's going to happen, right? And if I can add one thing, Brian, you know, why is DeFi so important and why should people look into the DeFi Academy? It's simply because if you look at Robert Kiyosaki, his 4-quadrant model, right? The simplest thing and probably the best lesson out of the entire book is creating a way where your passive income, the wealth that goes into your passive income, will automatically pay for all your debts and liabilities. That is the ultimate lesson that I've at least understood from Robert Kiyosaki. And DeFi allows exactly that, Brian. You leave your money in a bank, it's rotting. You know, with inflation, with the actual savings accounts and the rates that you're getting, you're actually losing money every single year. If you really want to be able to apply the rich dad, poor dad 4-quadrant principle, then all you need to do is go through DeFi. Just test it out. You're all about action, Brian. And you tell me all the time, what's the action? What's the action you can take? And I said, just take the money, take some stable coins. If you're afraid of crypto, just simply put stable coins, which are regulated, compliant in the US, like USDC. Put it on DeFi, lend it, so you don't take too much risk. Put it on a AAA platform that has the lowest risk, which you can learn through the DeFi Academy. And then just with the passive income that you're generating, then buy your Bitcoin. That's the lowest risk strategy that you can have because your passive income, you're not even spending your own money. You're using your passive income that you're generating through a stable coin if you still are skeptical about DeFi, and then you're using that to reinvest. So even if it goes to zero, you haven't lost anything. You're just actually trying out DeFi and you might learn some cool technological things and tricks, which I know you teach in your course.
Yeah, look, you're making some really important concepts there. I mean, back to the Robert Kiyosaki, I mean, rich people make money work for them, which is about owning assets that create a return. And most people have no concept of that. When you and I grew up, the only asset I would ever consider buying was a house, and you'd have to be kind of old. And unless you were an entrepreneur and you were involved in buying businesses or things, you would never even think of that. You were just getting the paycheck. You were in debt most of your life. And we all know how that story ends. The reason I love DeFi, a couple of reasons. First of all, it creates a real relationship with your money for the first time in your life.
Yes.
You know, you've been told your whole life you're not smart enough, consciously or subconsciously. Your pension, we have professionals for that. Again, things we've been talking about on London Real, used to be your doctor will tell you what to do. On London Real, we've had people on the show that have said, no, your doctor doesn't know. You know what to do.
Yeah.
Take control of your physical practice, your mental practice.
Absolutely.
And take control of your sovereignty. Now can take control of your money. And most people don't realize that their bank is involved in pretty much every minute of their life. It's taking a piece out, you know, from the rent to the car payment to the credit card to the this to the that. There's a financial institution in there taking a chunk and you don't even know it's happening. And you've been played this confidence trick where you've been told you're not smart enough. So I love DeFi for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it gets you a real relationship with your money where you can feel it and you can know what it is and you have ownership. Which changes the game. My sons, Caden and Damon, like you said, they'll go to bank lobbies in the future and there'll be museums or there'll be loft apartments. They won't even understand what we're talking about when we talk about the old days. So that's important. The next thing is what you're saying. There's so many incredible opportunities to own assets. My daughter's 17. Her name's Gabby. She's amazing, by the way. She was here in this chair about a month and a half ago, and we talked about the world and DeFi and currencies. And afterwards, she got a MetaMask wallet, and she got some Ethereum and a couple other cryptos. And now she's 17, and she owns an asset for the first time in her life. And she has a relationship with her money. That's priceless.
That's priceless.
My mom, 76 now, has Ethereum in a stable coin, and she's pretty smart. Robert Kiyosaki owns Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay, these are people that understand asset ownership and understand cash flow. Okay, I'm waiting for Grant Cardone to come around. He'll come around. He's doing a great job of real estate, so Grant Cardone's amazing. But asset ownership, cash flow, And again, you can do some amazing things with DeFi, and you can be part of this incredible infrastructure that is the fastest adoption of technology in human history, and will be probably forever. You know, this is being adopted, according to some people like Raoul Pal, who's been on the show, at twice the speed of the internet or the mobile phone. And those were crazy. There's like 60% year-on-year gains. Both of those technologies completely changed our lives. And yet, according to Raoul, you know, crypto's, on some estimates, growing at 113% a year. That's geometric growth. Everyone's calling for, what, 1 billion users by 2025. That's crazy. So if you're even listening to us right now, you're in a special place to be part of this ecosystem. So I'm telling everybody now, it's not too late. I believe next year it will be too late. So I am imploring you to take action now. Start small. As Anthony Scaramucci told me, the first Bitcoin is the hardest one to buy. Meaning, it's very hard to push yourself and get your head around involved in this thing. But once you buy one, you want to buy 10 or 100. And so, because you see the power. So I'm asking everybody, take $50. Like you said, put it in a stable coin. What's your option? You get, what, 0.25% in your bank. Why not get 8% on one of these DeFi platforms, right? So that's the perfect starting point. And so you lose it, great. That's what you spend at the bar in like an hour on Friday night, right? So that's a round of tequila shots in Vegas. So just do that. And then now see some of the incredible opportunities. Not to mention the fact these assets are growing. And if you look at any of the technology plays for the last few years, you know, it's no surprise to you and me that Bitcoin's at an all-time high today of 67,000. Every single guest I've had on the show are predicting a 10x growth in that in the next 5 years. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. But every single guest on my show is saying that that's pretty reasonable based on adoption alone. So it's time to do this and to take action.
It's time. And Brian, like you're saying, we're not sure if this is going to continue next year with the crazy rates we have today. People out there have 3 ways to really generate lots of money through DeFi, which is through lending, AMMs, automated market maker pools, and also farming. Those are the 3, and those are things you can learn through the course. And I really think you're right, because how long will these yields be sustainable? Obviously, we cut all the middlemen, so that's why the yielding is higher. And there's also way more liquidity once you use collateral in DeFi. You can actually move it. When you're talking about real estate, when you use collateral for real estate, it's frozen. So there are a lot of advantages that you have in DeFi, not just cutting the middlemen, but liquidity problems are solved also on DeFi. So like you said, you know, right now is the time to start. And I think we're very fortunate to be in such an amazing world.
We are. I mean, I pinch myself every day and think, wow, I'm actually part of this and this is happening. I was involved in the .com boom. I was the CFO of a company in New York City and from 99 to 02. And I watched it happen, but I never got to be a part of it. You know, I didn't get the equity. The company, you know, sold to someone else for assets. Most people did not gain in the Facebook and the Amazon and the Google and the Apple boom. They just didn't. They didn't see those Series A placements. They didn't have an opportunity. And yet right now, you can, even conservatively, invest in these platforms. And like you said, the stuff happening in DeFi is incredible.
It's incredible.
And the time to take advantage of this is now. And you guys are doing some amazing stuff. I'm very impressed with what you guys do at SwissBorg. And again, you guys got some really interesting protocols. And again, I force my students to do them because they understand what money is. They understand what a liquidity pool is and why it's amazing. They understand what yield farming is. They understand all these protocols. And you talk to people in the space and they say, maybe these are the real returns on $1. And the tiny ones you're getting are these ones that are forced low by a federal government that's printing money. So there's a lot of different theories out there. All I do know is this space isn't going anywhere. And there are people that disagree with me, even some of my former mentors that disagree with me. But I've seen it, I've experienced it, and every day I'm more in. And you know, hundreds of students right now in my academy learning these protocols, taking action. And the last thing I guess I want to say is that, you know, we've been fighting for freedom of speech. We've been fighting for free and fair elections. And I think financial freedom is the last human right that's being violated on a daily basis on this planet. You know it because you guys do this every single day. And there are between 2 and 4 billion people out there that are either unbanked or improperly banked, from your dad in Iran to people, not only, I say in Africa and South America, people in the United States that have to use Western Union and get scalped every day because the banking system and the government don't deem them worthy of having access to savings, to investment. That's that's like fundamentally wrong. And we can change all of that with DeFi, period. So it's exciting. Like we were built for this. We were built for this. So I've told everybody, and I'll say it again now, we're all in on this for the next 10 years. Like this is part of who we are. It's the fabric of London Real. It's consistent with everything we do. And I couldn't be more excited. And I want to do more in this space. I want to do a lot of stuff for London and the rest of the world. And just educate, I think, is where we're the best at. We can have conversations and we can educate. That's, I think, what we're really good at. And we'll leave the dApps to guys like you who can do really great technology and provide all this stuff. And again, I really respect all the pioneers out there. And you guys did it on your own. You guys didn't do it with VC. You guys did it with your community. You guys did it with your original people. And I respect that a lot. And again, we need to pay homage with the people that did the hard work the last few years when it wasn't cool or trendy or the prices were going down. So big respect to the crypto community, the DeFi community for laying the path. And we're just privileged to be part of continuing to get the message out there and teaching. And again, my whole life, as you can see, for the past couple hours, has been about people forcing me to take action.
Yeah.
Being the most uncomfortable possible is the fastest you'll learn. So when Ido Portal stuck me on the rail, or Dan Pena took me to the castle, or I drank the ayahuasca in Costa Rica, they're all ways of me forcing myself into difficult situations to learn. DeFi is the same way. Force yourself, I would say, to buy some stablecoin, to buy a bit of Bitcoin, and to get involved in this ecosystem. It's going to be uncomfortable. My students, they're kicking and screaming right now. It's week 3. I'm forcing them to do liquidity pools, yield swaps, and buy a call option on Ethereum. And most of these people, some of them never even known Bitcoin until 2 weeks ago. And they're like, Brian, I don't know what's going on. I said, okay, cool. When I learned options at the MIT Sloan School of Management, I didn't understand them for about 3 months. When I was on Wall Street, I didn't understand them until about 2 years in, when I really understood what an option was. Like I really understood. So I tell them, don't worry, put the trade on. You'll start to feel it and learn it, and you'll get comfortable with it. And then pretty soon, a banker won't tell you that you're too stupid to understand it. And they'll stop taking out between 6 and 8% of your entire net worth every single year through their hidden fees and everything they do. So again, I've seen what the banks do on the inside. I want to decentralize that. I also realize that we're going to have to find a way of working with these institutions going forward. And I'm okay with both parts. But the innovator's dilemma is they're never going to create the innovation themselves. It's always going to have to come from outside. Walmart didn't create Amazon, and it never could. And so guess what? That's why we need people in the DeFi space to disrupt this industry, and we want to help you.
And a million thanks for all that, Brian. The fact that you're here, you're kind of like the global massive speakers that's helping to portray and send that message to the community. So getting people like yourself is really accelerating mass adoption. That's what we need, right? We can't be all just geeks in there and 95% men in a room. We need people like you to help spread the word. So thank you for that. And also thank you for letting a fan interview you today. That's a great gesture. It shows how much of a man of your word and such a big heart that you have. And hope people enjoyed, your entire life, going from the very early days all the way to 2021 and the fascinating 10 years, a decade full of emotions from the highest highs, lowest lows, and everything in between. And it's been an amazing experience, and really hope that you have another 20, 30 years still to offer for London Real and the community out there.
Dude, Alex, you're the man, first of all. And just so everyone knows, I met you 2 weeks ago, okay? And so I'm all about energy. And for me, it was like a no-brainer to ask you. And just for everybody out there, Alex said yes in about 3 seconds. He said yes. And you said some Japanese quote. What was it?
Ichigo Ichie.
Ichigo Ichie, which I had heard before, which means?
Carpe diem.
Carpe diem, basically.
Yeah, once in a life. Seize the moment, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing we do here at London Real. And so I felt your energy. It was amazing. You interviewed me on your channel, and it was an incredible conversation. And so I'm just so glad that you said yes. You crushed it. You did an amazing job. And I'm so glad we can help get the word out there. And I'm just so glad that community really embraces these voices. And you're right, it can't be an echo chamber anymore. We have to get everyone involved, including people of all genders and economic backgrounds and ages. And so strangely enough, like I've introduced 2 incredible women into this space, my 17-year-old daughter and my 76-year-old mother. And again, we're going to keep going. And I had this conversation with Kim Kiyosaki, Robert's wife, and she's just like, you know what? We have to get everybody involved in these instruments, including women too. And so we're here to help broadcast this message. And so, yeah, I would just say to everybody, if you are here with us on this wavelength, and I tell this to my students in the DeFi Academy, it's kind of your job to get the people around you involved. So, you know, send them crypto, get them on the accounts, and get them involved. And again, I had to get my own family members involved. And it wasn't easy, you know, my mom's old school, you know, and so, but she's got the wallet now and she's finding it incredibly interesting. And so we have to make sure we go out of our way and educate.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So the last point that I wanted to share with you, Brian, is it's generational wealth, right? Even for those out there who think, oh, I made enough money, I don't need DeFi, or I don't need this crypto thing. Well, do it for your children, you know, like just learn how to do it and teach it to your daughter, teach it to your son, because they're controlling their wealth and they're also controlling their future in that sense. So if people don't want to do it for themselves, do it for the people you love the most, and that will make a lot more sense maybe.
It's the greatest gift you can give to your children.
It
is this financial education, and then maybe some digital assets that actually might do them some good one day.
Absolutely.
So again, I'm already thinking about how I'm gonna have this conversation with my sons, Caden and Damon. They're 4 and 5. They don't have crypto yet, but it'll be sooner than later, you know, for sure. And so, yeah, look, loving the space. We're going heavy on DeFi Academy. We're gonna have the greatest people in here pushing this message, and we're gonna spread it around the world. And yeah, I just wanna thank you, man. It's been great to talk about these 10 years. I don't know anybody that could have pulled this off like you guys. So thank you to the team at SwissBorg. And again, I think we're gonna be doing a lot of cool stuff in the future as well. I love you guys, your energy, your vibe, and all that. It's great spirit. And look, lastly, I just wanna say, like, to anybody out there who's, you know, listening to this right now, I would just say, you know, I've learned a lot of lessons from a lot of people over the years. And the biggest one I can say is make sure you're of service. That's it. And do something for someone else. That's all I have to say. And again, this comes from the greediest, selfish banker ever in the world that was created, right? And it led me nowhere. And I know when you look at, you know, back in the day, MTV or Instagram, those platforms seem to celebrate, you know, the bling and the jets and the gold and that stuff. But that stuff without human connection, without passing something on, without giving something greater to the humanity, it just all ends in tears. And again, it's a narrative that just doesn't get talked about very often. But it's true. You know, people have to find that element. And it's hard to do, man. We used to be all in a tribe. We used to be all in a savanna. There would be 100 of us. And guess what? There was no privacy. Because if you didn't show up that day and do your job, maybe you were the elder, maybe you were the kid, maybe you were the hunter, maybe you were the mother, maybe you know, cooked, maybe you made the tents, but you all had to show up every day. And we all felt that community spirit, and you did it to push the community forward and everybody could live. I feel like today we're just so disconnected. We value our privacy, which is important, but it also sometimes means we don't always show up every day. And I think it ultimately leads to this vacant feeling we feel. We're all disconnected and we all feel like, why are we doing this? And life doesn't make sense. And again, I just think we gotta just get back and remember this bigger picture. So be of service to someone today. Guess what? It's gonna suck. Life's gonna throw you these big challenges. Life is happening for you, not to you. These are gifts. Take them and just do something better with them. Create the man or the woman that you want to be, you know? Create the person you respect. Become that person. Everyone is watching all the time. You are a leader whether you know it or not. That's it, because everyone's watching. Your family's watching, your friends are watching, your coworkers are watching. They watch you every minute of the day. Do you show up? Do you show up positive? Do you present yourself? Do you create solutions? Do you create innovation? Do you fight not to break character? Do you try to be generous? Do you try to be grateful? Every day, imagine if everybody showed up like that. It would be an incredible world. So that's the message. That's the message I'd like everybody to depart with. And if you can broadcast, do it. Because it's just one of the most greatest experiences of my life. I'm so grateful. If I died tomorrow, it would be okay. Because I got 10 years of London Rio. It's forced me to live this amazing life that it's kind of hard to even believe that's one person. And the next 10 years are going to be even further off the chain, I believe. So stay tuned. Last, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there who supports us. London Rio wouldn't be anything without the community. because they're the ones that watch the videos. And I get stopped by people in the street all the time. I'm telling you, when I'm having the toughest day, the hardest day, the most stress, the most things that are breaking around here, guy the other day that stopped his car in the middle of the street and got out and said, "Thank you so much, your videos changed my life." And I used to say, "Oh, thanks, cool." And then they'd look me in the eyes and say, "It really changed my life." And they'll talk about a guest and that. This happens all the time. And it always keeps me going. So I want to thank them and all the people that were part of my journey that I talked about tonight, and the 950 others that I didn't mention. They all gave me a little ray of hope and kept me going. So they were contributing somehow to the greater picture, and they allowed me to contribute to the greater picture. And again, we are all one, man. We got to remember that. So let's do that. Thanks so much, man, and to the next 10
Everything
years.
goes back to you, by the way, for everything you said, for contribution and everything you brought to the community.
Yeah, man. Look, it's my pleasure, man. It's really it's been all my honor. So, yeah, thanks so much to you. Thanks so much to everybody. Hope everyone enjoyed this episode. And again, another 10 years. Here we go. All right, Alex, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, brother.
All right, to be continued when it comes to our journey.
Definitely.
And that's it. God bless everybody. As we say on London Real, it's about the journey, as we used to say, or transform yourself, as we used to say. Bless, and let's go get some. That's it. We're out.